when you're a student and you got, 20 hours, 25 hours behind you and you're shitting a solid gold brick because you don't know where you are.
Stressful.
That's essentially what happened when I was coming into Bridgeport. They're like, "You're not coming into Bridgeport, dude. You're probably over in New London." I'm like, "Oh yeah. So just tell me how to get to Bridgeport." I said I was a student pilot. I was lost. I didn't know where I was. You got to admit it. You don't want to admit it.
At that point, the pride has to go out the window, or you're gonna be in bigger trouble.
I landed in Bridgeport, and got a Coke and went to the bathroom and said, "Man, I'll come home now."
Welcome to the Dylan and Joe Basement Podcast. We're your hosts, Dylan
and Joe, off of the Atlantic coast. I'm about 220 miles away from where our subject takes place today, the corner.
Joe's taking a special field trip for this podcast down to the absolute corner of what's known as the Devil's Triangle or Bermuda Triangle.
That's absolutely right. Today we're talking about the Bermuda Triangle, that section of the Atlantic Ocean that has mysteriously claimed so many ships and planes, and not just claimed them, but have left them gone without a trace, almost as if they vanished off the face of the earth. And it's led people to speculate many things about the triangle and what is it about? Is it actually doing this and making people disappeared? Is it just an awful weather phenomenon that happens there? And unlike a lot of other disappearing ships and planes around the world, the explanations aren't nearly as vivid as those. A lot of times we don't really know what happens. And today we're going to go into a couple of those cases and try to figure out what is the Bermuda Triangle, what's actually going on there.
Yeah, so about the Bermuda Triangle, we've got an area that runs from Bermuda down to Puerto Rico and over to the west to right about Miami.
Right, that makes that triangle shape.
A triangle that's about 500. It's really speculation, depending on what you read. Mm-hmm. But the surface area of that, let's just say the area of that triangle, is about 500,000 miles.
Yeah, I found a couple of different variations of it, but that seems to be the most consistent one. Some people imagine it's larger than it is, but not a whole lot of people think it's smaller than that. I think that's the most common one. 500,000 square miles of open ocean.
Open ocean where there's been... let's just say thousands of lives lost. And
absolutely.
It actually isn't that big compared to the rest of the ocean.
True. As far as the actual disappeared ships and planes go, I found the closest estimate people can find is about 50 ships and 20 planes that have completely disappeared. That's not counting the thousands of shipwrecks and plane crashes that have been well documented going down. A lot of times, we'll find out as we talk about it, people just don't know what happened to these people, unlike most naval disasters where, unfortunately, because of the way communication works, we have a very detailed picture of what actually happened. For these cases, the Bermuda Triangle, we really don't. It's about trying to piece together what happened and speculation afterwards with what possibly could have occurred, but ultimately, it's just an educated guess for the most of them.
Yeah, and like Joe said, I mean, it's really important to emphasize that a handful of these things are literally fell off the face of the earth. There are no traces of them.
Not a trace.
Not a trace. Some of them there are. As mentioned, there are some that there were, they were just crashed and burned, basically, and there was evidence or shipwrecks or debris or something like that. But there is a good chunk of them that are just completely still not found for over 100 years, if not more.
Absolutely. And I think it is important to mention, even though that the Bermuda Triangle is so mysterious, the part of the world it's in is just famous for violent weather. I mean, it's right in Hurricane Alley. Tropical storms and hurricanes hit that section of the Atlantic Ocean every year, multiple times. Obviously, sometimes they're stronger than others. Some years are worse than others. But that kind of violent storms happening in the air and in the ocean is a recipe for disaster when it comes to even the most experienced naval captains and pilots. It's tough to fly out there. I wouldn't recommend anyone who's a novice at either tried the Bermuda Triangle for their first flight. Not recommended.
No, not recommended. Not at all.
Yeah.
So,
Another thing I found out about it is that I had no idea about this beforehand. So we all know the Marianas Trench is the deepest point in the ocean. That's actually in the Pacific Ocean, I believe. But the deepest point in the Atlantic Ocean, as far as we know, is called the Milwaukee Depth. And that is located inside the Bermuda Triangle. So the deepest point in the Atlantic Ocean is actually within the area of that triangle. And it's 27,493 feet deep. That is deep.
repeat that again. How deep is it?
27,493 feet down.
That's
very deep.
That's
It's miles and miles deep. Yeah.
That's the cruising altitude of the airliner that you took to Florida.
Holy shit. So that's a perfect way to picture it. So how high up you were, that's how far down that particular part of the ocean goes, which I think is an interesting fact, Bermuda Triangle, and might lead to why some of these things are never found again, because getting down there is near impossible. As we know, the Marianas Trench is one of the least explored places on the entire planet. And I imagine the Milwaukee Depth be pretty high up on the list of unknowns as far as that goes.
Yeah, that's
very difficult
pretty
to look in
hardcore.
there.
That's insane. So there's that. This is another weird thing there is that there's, evidence of lost civilizations, like speculating, that could cause a lot of problems, like the Bimini Road, which is in, I believe that's in Bahamas. Oh,
Maybe.
the whole thing
I
is
don't know.
that
I haven't heard of it.
yeah, Bimini Road looks like a paved road of gigantic blocks the size of the pyramid blocks.
Damn.
That
Are they as big as the ones in Gigantia, or they couldn't be? Those are huge.
they're pretty big, man. I gotta look it up, but they look very man-made, and it's like a road made of stone under the ocean.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
Under the sea, as they say.
Under the sea.
That is very odd.
Yeah, so we've got some famous examples. We want to do some storytelling for you guys.
Yeah.
Of missing.
Let's look at the actual stories that have led to this, reputation the Bermuda Triangle has. It's not just one or two cases; it's a bunch of them. And we picked out a couple of them that are the more famous ones to highlight what is the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, so we've got missing ships, missing planes, and then one land incidents. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Bermuda Triangle, it makes people disappear. Bermuda Triangle, don't go too near.
We're talking about land, ships and planes here because that's what everyone knows. But little does anybody know that in 1969, in Bimini, Bahama, near the Bimini Road, there's the Great Isaac Lighthouse. Who's ever heard of that? Not me.
Not Isaac.
There was once upon a time in 1969, two lighthouse keepers, just like in the movie The Lighthouse. Very similar type of people. The
weather's a little bit nicer, I'd imagine, most of the year, though. You don't have to wear a wool coat for half the year when you're in the Bahama Lighthouse.
Yeah, and I don't know what the seabird situation is in Bahamas, but I do know that was a big problem in the movie
Lighthouse. Yeah.
Seabirds were always up to no good, and people being sexually frustrated. Probably still a case here, and this could have been a case of that. Maybe someone would like to check.
I don't know how many sirens live down there that can seduce you and drag you into the depths of the ocean.
I don't know, but I can't say a siren would get me in the ocean. If you're imagine being stuck on a boat for years or months or whatever it is, and then there's all this rock full of attractive women.
If I don't have a Madame de Voyage, you better believe I'm diving in with those mermaids.
I'd be like, yeah, all right. They have beautiful voices, so they're like singing to you, and they're just on this rock calling your name. I'd be like,
it's a no-brainer. You gotta go.
Let me just park this thing.
Yeah, let me just, I'll be careful. I have to check it out though. I'd be stupid not to.
Park this thing real quick. Get the old boat out there. I'll be right over there.
We'll be right back.
I wouldn't die.
It's fine. So what happened there in 1969? I'm not aware of this.
The story is quite simple, and the story is. I wish I had more to elaborate on, but one day they were there, one day they were not. In 1969.
So people went to go check on the lighthouse, and those two keepers had vanished without a trace.
Where to be found?
Ah,
in the Bermuda Triangle, they were gone.
Yeah, we'll find out, like you said, a lot for these stories. It's not just the fact that people die or crash, is that there's no trace of them. We have no idea what happened to them whatsoever. And it sounds like those two guys went up and disappeared. I mean, I like to think there's probably a happier version of the story where they fell in love and people wouldn't understand, so they had to run off together. But it's probably something more dark than that. If there's no trace of them whatsoever.
Yeah,
You know?
who knows? But they're gone. So that's our land story. I got no other land ones. You get any land stories, Joe?
I like that. No, I didn't even know there was a land story. I'm glad you brought that one up.
Yep.
Just nowhere to be safe in the Bermuda Triangle, not even on solid ground.
Nope, can't be safe. Can't be safe. So, so we've got some other stories you may or may not have heard of, and probably definitely at least one of them you have.
Mhm.
So, Joe, where do you want to start with this? I mean, I think that may be a good idea, just chronologically. We can start with the first account of this ever showing up in the books. Do you know what I'm going to get at?
You read my rhyme as far as the chronology goes. I was going to start with the earlier stories of Bermuda Triangle are before flight was so common that you'd be having planes flying over there constantly. My story starts in 1918. Is your story before that?
My story starts in 1492.
Oh, how could I forget to add this one in? Let's start with 1492 because that's the longest ago that this has ever been, documented of something happening in Bermuda Triangle. And I think people might remember this one, even if you just heard the year. It reminds you of something. So please,
Exactly.
take it away.
In 1492, Christopher Columbus went out and sailed the ocean blue. Is that
He
how it
sure
goes?
did.
He sure
You know,
did.
for as reviled we think that Columbus is and how much we disrespect the guy, he sure does come up a lot on the podcast, though, because he's just a famous figure, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, our Spanish friend made his way over to the Bermuda Triangle.
Well, our Italian friend that was financed by Spain because Italy would not finance his journey. They thought we're not going to pay for you.
Columbus Spanish or Italian?
Well, he's Italian. I mean, Italian heritage all over America, for example. I don't know how they feel about him in Italy, but the festivals in New York and in Providence, they're big time. The Columbus Day is a big Italian festival, and they love him. They claim him as one of their own sons. It's the man who discovered the New World, and he's Italian. Sure, he was sailing a Spanish ship under the auspices of Queen Isabella of Spain, but he's an Italian guy, and they claim him as their own. Columbus is an Italian guy. Yep.
Yeah, didn't know that. So I thought he was Spanish.
I think almost everyone he sailed with was Spanish, though, because they were all
He
Spanish
was
ships.
on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So 1492, the day before he found the New World, he was somewhere off the coast of Bermuda, right? Or
Mhm.
Bahamas, one of the two. I always forget.
I would imagine it'd be more the Bahamas because I think he ended up in the
Maybe before,
Caribbean,
yeah, a
so
little
you'd
too
think
far
it's
out.
more south. I'm not quite sure, but I
You're
think
right.
that's what it was.
In his journal, this is a fact. This isn't a like speculation translation thing. Like this is a fact.
Yeah.
He saw multiple lights in the sky for a while, going in and out of the water. And there's
Weird.
nothing that you can't explain that. And I think he described them as lanterns because they didn't have LEDs.
Right? Yeah, they didn't think it was LEDs.
Yeah, but he saw lights going in and out of the water in the Bermuda Triangle. In the late 1400s. That's the first time this ever showed up in writing that we know of. Besides the fact that the Native Americans and the native people in
Native
South
Bahamians
America,
or Native
yeah, exactly.
Caribbeans.
They had plenty of stories of like, hey, this is a thing. Like they're the gods, as always. They're the gods. But that's been a thing for a while. But overall, in modern history, as far as America goes, Christopher Columbus, first dude to break the fucking seal of this one.
Pop that puppy wide open, didn't he? And the floodgates did open after that because we have so many tales of it happening. Like I said, we're just highlighting a couple of them that are the more famous ones. But if you look up a list of incidents in the Bermuda Triangle, it's you scroll for an hour. I mean, it's just so many situations of happening. And those are just the ones, like you said, that are unexplained. If you go on just the registered shipwrecks or plane crashes, the list gets longer and longer. So it's ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. You can go, Google what you want right now and see what comes up, and you'll get about 1,000 different, or actually less. But if you actually pull up shipwreck maps, it's
exactly
wild.
Right. Yeah.
All the way to U-boats sinking American vessels in the Bermuda Triangle, like everything, you name it. Crazy stories about that we're not going to into, but there's
It's a wild place, the Triangle.
wild story of a U-boat sinking a ship within visual distance of Miami Beach. I mean, like,
That's crazy.
oh yeah, it's insane. And everyone on Miami is just trying to have a beer, and they're like, "That's a U-boat actually shooting upon an American vessel," and they heard it, saw the whole thing.
Way too close for comfort at that point.
Way too close for comfort when the Germans are actually in visual distance.
Yeah.
But just that whole part of the ocean has a lot more sunken ships than you can Google.
Mm-hmm. So I was going to start off with one of the earliest ones that's documented after Columbus and when the country of the United States had already been established for some time. And my story starts in 1918.
Let it rip. I know where you're going.
Yes, please. This is the disappearance of the ship, the USS Cyclops, which is a fucking badass name for a ship. I really like it.
God damn, I wish I was on the Uss Cyclops.
Oh, I wish it was on it before this particular incident.
Yep.
Yeah.
Real cool.
So we're going back to March 4th, 1918. And the USS Cyclops was a part of the United States Navy, but it wasn't a battleship. It was actually a cargo ship. So they would ship out large amounts of materials, and it was stationed down in the Bermuda Triangle before people really called it that. So it was carrying a load of manganese ore, which is a pretty rare metal to be using around. You can use it for all different kinds of substances. And the last we know, it had contact and let the folks on the land know that they had one engine running. So they already had a kind of hobbled ship, and they had it full up with manganese. And it was a crew of 309 men on board, 309 Navy men. And on that day, March 4th, it could have happened after it, or it could happen on that day. But March 4th is the last known contact we ever had with those people. And the ship, like we said, disappeared with no trace. There was no shipwreck. There was no bodies found. There was no debris. None of that manganese ore was ever found again. And that ship disappeared without a trace, making it the largest loss of life in any U.S. naval event in history outside of combat. So anytime that someone was actually not engaged in a naval warfare, they never lost this many people before. They gone without a trace. 309 souls just gone. We have no idea where they are to this day. And that's one of the earliest recorded in modern history events of the Bermuda Triangle claiming lives. And that is just such a massive ship to go missing with so many people on board. You'd think that some kind of evidence or scraps behind would come up, or someone would, be left behind. But no, the whole ship with the cargo and all 309 men gone out of trace.
Or even to this day, people are scanning the ocean like crazy now because they can finally have the technology to find
Right, now we can look down there. Right?
Nothing's shown up about the Cyclops. We're still waiting on it.
Yeah. I thought an interesting tag on that story was that it also had two sister ships. A lot of the times when they commission a ship, they'll commission ships that are built very similarly. They call them sister ships. The two sister ships did not have as cool a name as the Cyclops. They were called the Proteus and the Nereus, which I guess they're probably also Greek names, but Cyclops is the coolest one. And they were like I said, they were also cargo ships, and they lasted much longer after 1918. But during World War II, both of those ships also went missing in the Bermuda Triangle, and we still don't have any evidence of what happened. No shipwrecks as far as we know. But it's weirdly enough that not only the ship, the Cyclops, but years later, both of his sister ships went missing in the same section of the world, doing the same job, hauling a bunch of metal around the Caribbean Sea into the Bermuda Triangle in the Atlantic. Just pretty wild stuff that would happen multiple times to the same kind of ship.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't know that it had sister ships. I just read about the Cyclops.
Yeah.
We had a weird one.
Mm-hmm.
This is it's similar to my Lighthouse story. It's also similar to...
let's go back and forth.
Yeah, the Ellen Austin story. I like this one a lot. This one is not have such a crazy name. I do have another crazy name one, but this one's pretty fun too. Before we get into the heavyweight title of the Bermuda Triangle stories, we got a couple of interesting
Undisputed
ones that
champ.
I think maybe you guys haven't heard of. And if you listen to the pod in the shower, on the toilet, in the car, at work, sleeping, whatever it is, these are just fun bedtime stories.
Let's hear it.
Once upon a time, in 1872, on the 4th of December, there was a ship called the Mary Celeste that had nobody on it. And it didn't not have nobody on it when it left port. So this is possibly, in my mind, one of the most mysterious stories of shipwrecks ever, and it obviously happens in the Bermuda Triangle.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a ship discovered on the 4th of December in 1872 with everything right in place. Everything, like food hot type of story, cigarettes still lit.
No way. Wow.
Yeah. And everything was in place except the people. The whole crew was gone.
There lies the problem, right? If everything was fine, they'd still be smoking those cigarettes. But where are all the crew? That's the big.
Right?
But what's going on here?
Exactly. It was found straight on the sea, days after it started its journey from New York to Italy. So there were 7 crew members, along with Captain Benjamin Briggs.
Ooh,
his
that's
wife.
a good fucking sea captain name. It's like you're born to be a sea captain.
Captain Briggs, his wife, and their
Put him in the brig. So says Captain Briggs.
Exactly. His wife and their 2-year-old daughter.
Oh, that's
This
sad.
vessel was loaded with raw alcohol, whatever that means. Have you ever had raw alcohol?
I don't think so.
Alcohol
I'd have to imagine.
raw,
Yeah, nice uncut,
uncut.
raw alcohol.
Yeah,
I'd imagine that'd be like grain alcohol or moonshine or something. I don't know.
I think moonshine's the best example of what I think raw alcohol is. Like,
Yeah, probably.
just grains that are fermented into pure, clear alcohol.
Yeah. Yep.
So, so when passing a British ship, before this all happened, when passing a British ship called the De Gracia, it found Mary Celeste under partial sail in the Atlantic, off of the Azores. So it's weird because this is a Bermuda Triangle story,
Mm-hmm.
but
But it's happening over in Europe almost.
yeah, exactly. So, and it was mentioned in the top Bermuda Triangle stories because it is related. So don't get confused.
Well, it is worth mentioning that a lot of people consider the Bermuda Triangle, like we said, a lot larger than it is, and some people actually expand it out to its point, traveling almost across the Atlantic Ocean. So it gets more narrower as it goes. But like we said, most accounts will have it be 500,000 square miles, but we have ones that go up to 2-3 million square miles if you believe that that's larger than that, which that might be one of those cases there where people think the triangle doesn't end at Bermuda. It goes along the Atlantic Ocean along the same thing. So maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, it's kind of where we're going here. So, and a big part of the reason that might be is the fact that magnetic north increases 35 miles every year. Every year.
That is an important
magnetic
part
north
of
goes a little bit like
navigating.
west or northeast or whatever it is. And it's not in Russia yet, but it eventually will be in the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's heading south.
It changes every year. 35 miles. That's no joke.
That's huge.
Yeah, so they found, this British ship found the Mary Celeste under partial sail, not no sail, not full sail, just
right,
half sail. Nobody on it, and the lifeboat was also missing.
Interesting.
It was also found that 9 of the barrels of the cargo were empty, and there was a sword on deck. No trace of the people were ever found, or the lifeboat or anything.
That's an interesting one. Because the first thing you would think would be pirates raiding it maybe and taking the cargo on board. But if the ship's otherwise undisturbed and you don't actually end up finding the people, that leads to more questions than it answers.
Yeah. So exactly. So like you have the pirate theory, but the barrels were empty, not stolen. So unless they got on board and drank 9 barrels of grain alcohol, which is
if they drank 9 barrels of grain alcohol, you'd find their bodies still on the board the ship. I'd imagine. I don't think they were going to make it off the ship.
A little mess, but it was in good shape.
Wow.
There was a perfectly skilled crew on a good weather day.
Yeah.
And an uncompromised ship that was still like moving. Like there was it wasn't like it was just a ghost ship with the sails up and like, whole thing. So that's a weird one, is that you just have a completely abandoned ship. Everybody's missing. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with it. So why would they take a boat to go escape this type of thing? So that's another weird one from Brandon.
And the barrels of moonshine or the pure, what is it called, raw alcohol, are empty, but they're not stolen. Yeah. And I imagine you would be able to tell if they emptied it out onto the deck of the ship, because the whole thing would be a powder keg, for lack of a better word, and it would all smell like pure alcohol and probably be easily combustible. I don't think you can empty that all out onto the deck of a boat and have people not notice it even afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Right
So
on.
what stories you guys?
So that leads me to the Carol A. Deering, which is not as cool of a name as Cyclops, but it's another person's name for the ship. This one happens in January 31st, 1921, so only 3 years after the disappearance of the USS Cyclops. This one is kind of an older boat, though. It was commissioned before the Cyclops was built, because it's a 5-masted schooner, so it's one of those older wooden ships that still is in place for years and years afterwards. We already talked about in the past that unlike maybe pedestrian cars, when they build these ships, are so massive and expensive. As long as they still work, you keep using them, and ships are in service for much longer after than planes or cars or other modes of transportation. This one was a 5-masted schooner, and it wasn't disappear without a trace. They did find the ship, much like the story you just told. They found it run aground, and much like the story you just told as well, no trace of anyone on board, no structural damage to the sails of the ship besides the fact that it had run aground, and they couldn't find what happened to anyone on board the ship or any trace of where they might have gone or why they were running aground in the first place. So you'd imagine there'd be more evidence there, but they found the ship totally intact, run aground, not a soul on board, and no one knows what happened to any of them.
It's a crazy story. So it's just the same theme over and over again, that if the boats aren't sunk, there's just nobody there. It's like these people vanished in midair.
Right.
And it's another story from 1881 about the Ellen Austin, a white oak schooner.
Another schooner.
Yeah, 210 foot long schooner, the Ellen Austin, which is 210 feet is how many gorillas? How many gorillas long is 210
Well, so
feet?
it would be about 20 gorillas to 100 feet. So it'd be about 40 gorillas and maybe a spider monkey.
Well, let's just say gorillas are 10 feet tall. They're not.
They're not. We found out they're
gorillas,
less
right?
than 6 feet tall. They're 5 foot and change.
Shit, really?
So if we even round it up to 6 feet, that would be around 35 to 40 gorillas long. That's how big the ship is here.
Big ship, man. 35 gorillas long.
Mm-hmm. From toe to head.
Toe to head.
They don't have tails, so I couldn't say toe to tail.
Wow, that's crazy. So
that was a similar thing. What would happen to that ship?
Yeah, dude. These stories are all the same, and I got one more after this too.
Oh, right on.
Ellen Austin, another boring ass name that's not the Cyclops, but
yeah, they seem like women's names.
Everybody for my next story because it does have a cool name.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I hope that you have the same one. I hope you found it, Joe.
No.
Oh.
I don't have any more. I don't have any cool names left.
I got a cool name one after this, which is why you maybe shouldn't name your boat this name, but we'll get there.
All right. Well, we're hopping the timeline between back and forth, but I'll be able to put the dates up so people can keep track of it.
A little bit, yeah, but it's just how.
But it doesn't matter because, like you said, it's the same theme. This just keeps happening over and over and over again, and it happened 100 years earlier and 100 years after. It's wild shit. Yeah. The next one I have is
Oh, hang on, I'm still there. Hang on.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, it's all good. So 1881. 50 gorillas long. Ellen
Austin. Oh, right. Yeah, we're at 50
going from New York to London.
Okay.
Decided to stumble upon a derelict within the Bermuda Triangle for some reason. What does that mean?
Derelict ship?
No. She stumbled upon a derelict near the Bermuda Triangle.
I would usually picture a derelict means someone who's like a homeless person back in the day. It's like they're street people. They live outside. Like, oh, look at this derelict. He's up to no good. He's a ruffian. He's a hoodlum. He really doesn't have any place to call home. And that can also be used for things like ships, where the derelict ship would be like a ship that was abandoned and had no one running it and nowhere to be.
Maybe the story, I misread the story. Maybe that Ellen Austin found a derelict ship.
Oh, okay. So the derelict ship wasn't actually the Ellen Austin. They're the ones who came upon it. That makes sense.
Based off of what I'm reading right now, that seems to not make any sense. But I think that's what I thought. The Ellen Austin was the ship that they found that was missing. I think that Ellen Austin found a ship. So, so here's the story. So let's just say that there's this boat stumbled upon a derelict ship near the Bermuda Triangle. Everything seemed fine with the schooner, because it sounds like they're both schooners. That's why I got confused, because like the Ellen Austin is definitely an oak schooner, and they also found another schooner. Drifting just north of the Sargasso Sea. Everything was cool, but there was a missing crew. So Captain Baker of the Ellen Austin asked to observe the derelict for 2 days, just to make sure that this isn't some sort of pirate trap or something.
Right. You think that maybe it's like a bait ship.
Basically, Captain Baker found this like abandoned boat in the middle of the ocean, and his first thought was, all right, this is a trap. Let's not go up to this boat.
Right.
And he waited 2 days just to see if there's any movement on there or whatever it is, because this is probably a typical move from pirates or whatever it is. Nothing happened. No response, no people, no whatever it is. So Captain Baker entered this abandoned ship,
Yeah.
and he found the ship well packed, stopped to the brigs with all sorts of things, and just
Damn.
absolutely no crew at all. So so the craziest thing about this is kind of funny. It's not funny, but it is funny. He uh, he decided to tow this derelict vessel back with him to a port.
At least got all that cargo at the very least from all
yeah,
that.
yeah, it's worth it. Hey, we got a boat out here. Let's tow it in. And he placed like half of his crew on the ship, and they were like prized, good folks, good crew. So they set sail together, and after 2 days of sail on calm water, the boat separated path, and then the boat vanished again.
No. Oh, it almost made it back out.
He almost made it back with the legit crew on there that he
Yeah. He knew that crew personally, and then they go missing too. You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
God damn.
So it looks like so then it vanished, and they kind of spotted again. They caught back up with it, and they went back, and they eventually got up to it, kind of attached themselves to it, and Captain Baker went on there, and his crew was gone, completely gone. Crew's gone.
Wow.
Nobody's on board again, and he's like, "What in the fuck is the deal with this thing?"
That's crazy. Here I am thinking the stories they found in the derelict ship, but then the disappearance happens once again.
Yes, the people disappeared again.
What the hell?
Same thing. It's the same story. Originally, they find a boat that has nobody on it, and then he puts his own crew on there and says, "Hey, you guys are skilled.
Right.
Let's bring this bitch back." And and they're gone again. So and there's no chance of unraveling the story.
No.
How weird is that? You find a boat, you put people on it, and then those people all go missing.
Sounds like a cursed ship to me. Cursed ghost vessel. Yeah, you shouldn't have taken it. Should have left it be.
I think so too.
You can say that now, hindsight being 2020, but I would have tried to do the same thing. Let's take this thing back to port. Free cargo. Mm-hmm. Not a pirate trap. Let's take it.
Yep, exactly. So I got one more story about boats.
Okay. So, my next one is about the first ship that we have on this list. That is, I think, no, besides the first one you said, but it's just a passenger, a civilian ship. It's not a large ship, and it's not like a cargo vessel for the Navy. It's just actually a personal pleasure yacht. And this one takes place in December 28th, 1948.
Bring it on. What do we got? We got a pleasure yacht in 1948, right after the war. People had money. They were just trying to...
Oh, no, I'm mistaken. This one takes place in September 26, 1955. So this is a while after World War II.
No, but we got money. We got money.
We got money. We got money. Yeah. So this one's in 1955 rather, and it's called the Connemara 4. So I'd have to imagine it's probably Connemara, all one word. And you have to imagine there was probably 3 Connemaras before this one, but I don't know if they ever deserved the fate that this one had. So this one, like I said, it was a personal yacht. So the crew is a very small crew, only about a handful of people on board, and someone who's probably very wealthy. I didn't get the person's name in particular. But this yacht was found adrift in the Bermuda Triangle. So much like the schooner you're talking about, it's floating away. No particular damage to the ship, but there's no one on board. And when it set sail, obviously it had a fully stacked crew and the captain on board. But when they found it, no crew to be had. People investigated the ship, and the only thing they could think beforehand is that there was a hurricane called Hurricane Ione had happened 1 week prior. But that happened a week ago, and they found the ship a week later. Like I said, sailing with no crew, just drifting off on its own. And they speculated that perhaps the crew had died during the hurricane, but if that was the case, you would think the ship would go down with them. It's almost like it swept all the people off the deck and they went and drowned at the Davy Jones locker. But they really still don't know to this day the cause of the disappearance of the people. They did find the ship in sailing condition, sailing perfectly well on its own, floating in the Bermuda Triangle, no one on board. And it was just a personal yacht.
That's crazy. It's just so weird. I mean, like, what's the deal with this? People don't just several people just go flying off boats. It's just,
of course. And of course, I mean, now we're much better at, understanding forensic science and trying to figure out working back from, Z to A and figuring out what happened there. But as you get more and more towards the modern times, it just seems stranger and stranger that they couldn't find one trace or one idea of what could have happened. It just almost like they up and popped off the face of the earth. Like you said, they up and vanished.
Often vanished. So I got a story. It's kind of one. I got a one upper on this one.
Please.
We've got a priest.
A priest. Well, let me get my my priest costume. We'll be right back.
Yeah. All right, we're waiting for Joe to get his priest costume on.
I didn't bring it to Florida with me.
We've got a priest on a boat called the Witchcraft.
The
I'm not kidding. This is a true story.
Witchcraft and a priest on board.
Yeah.
It sounds like some real life irony.
Dan Burrak, famous captain of the 23-foot boat called the Witchcraft, brings his friend Father Patrick Hogan for a ride to go look at Christmas.
That's a priest name if I ever heard one. Father Patrick Hogan.
So December 22nd, 1967,
Yeah.
Captain Dan Burrak, aka just a guy with a boat, no one's has a 23-foot, aka 3 to 4 gorillas long luxury yacht, and he says to his buddy Father Patrick Horgan, "Let's go look at the famous Christmas lights off the coast of Miami on my boat at night."
A little pleasure cruise, some sightseeing.
Pleasure cruise to go look at Christmas lights with your friend the priest off the coast of Miami.
Sounds romantic.
Romantic day.
I hope everything went well for them.
All is good. All is great until the Coast Guard received a call from the captain saying that, "Hey, it's Captain Dan Burrak. We hit something, but it's fine. It's not a big deal. Like, it's literally nothing.
We're fine."
Yeah, like, it's just letting you know we hit something, but so far, like, no water, no damage, like, pretty low key. We don't know what we hit, but it's all good. But I think I might need help being towed to shore, something like that.
Sure.
So
Just, you can't be too safe kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So the Coast Guard made it to his location in 19 minutes, and nothing was there. And that's
19 minutes? You couldn't get there much faster than that. That's
pretty fast.
Yeah.
I mean, call 911 to your house, and 19 minutes is a good time.
Yeah, you hope that it's that quick for sure.
Yeah. So the area with the location was completely deserted. No signs of shit. Nothing stranded. Nothing there previously. No floating debris. No nothing.
Yeah.
And specifically, the type of boat that they had was virtually unsinkable.
Really?
Based off of the way that it was designed, and like a billion different life-saving devices, life jackets, lifeboats, flares, distress signals, etc.
No trace.
Nothing was used. The ship was gone. They searched hundreds of square miles of the ocean over the next few days. Nothing came up. Nothing's been found ever to this day. Ship's gone. Priest is gone. Guy's gone.
The Witchcraft is no more.
19-minute notice for the Coast Guard to get there. They got there in 19 minutes. Nothing.
That's such a fast response time. And that really is a common theme to these disappearances, which is that the last known contact is usually something that's so mundane and everything's all well and good. It's not that they're distressed, SOS, shooting flares up and throwing out the life vests. It really is just we're all good, just letting you know where we are. And then next minute they come by and no trace of them. It's so odd.
Nothing. So that's what I got for boats.
For sure. I have two more on my list. And the first one I want to talk about before we get into the heavy hitter is the first plane I'm talking about. And that's the one that actually happened in December 28th, 1948. So it's previous to the last one, but it's the first plane. And this plane's a Douglas DC-3. And it's flight number NC16002. And wouldn't you know it, doesn't go well for them in the same version. So on December 28th, 1948, it disappeared on a flight from Puerto Rico to Miami. So they're really just threading the needle of the Bermuda Triangle there, going from Puerto Rico, one point of the triangle, to Miami, which is basically the other point on the lower end.
20 minutes.
And again, no distress radio calls. The flight left on time. They didn't have any inclement weather that they would particularly be nervous about or be shooting back and forth transmissions. And wouldn't you know it, 32 people on board in the plane, like we said, vanished. They have no trace of the plane going down, no distress signals, no evidence of any people dead in the ocean, and they just gone without a trace. They actually sent out the Civil Aeronautics Board to investigate it, because when a flight like that goes down, you have to try to figure out what happened and, you know, determine why the accident happened, make sure it doesn't happen again. When they went out there, like you said, they looked high and low all over the ocean. They tried to track the flight path or its projected flight path, and they found no trace of it, and they could find no cause for the disappearance whatsoever. Another question mark.
Another question mark. Identical story from 1948. An Avro two-door Star Tiger had 6 crew, 27 passengers from the Azores to Kinley Field in Bermuda. Same thing. Gone. No trace.
That's interesting, because that's the top end of the triangle, and the other story is the bottom end of the triangle. The very same year, 2 flights with about the same amount of people completely vanish.
Yep. Crazy town.
Nuts.
Yeah, really weird.
Actually, in August 28th, 1963, so it's more modern than the other one. So at this point, we have very sophisticated, you know, not as opposed to today. Compared to today, our technology is amazing. But 63 versus 1918 with the USS Cyclops, I mean, we got, you know, advanced radar, radio signaling. We have all kinds of devices that kind of can orient where you are. And this is actually 2 planes going missing, and they are some biggins. It's 2 KC-135 Stratotankers. So these are those giant planes that fly in the sky, and their job is to refuel smaller planes mid-flight. So they are just full of fuel, and they're big honking things. And 2 of them go missing in the Bermuda Triangle the same day, August 28th. So the actual events that happened there, as far as we know, is that these 2 Stratotankers collided with each other in the Bermuda Triangle. So I don't know if they were flying too close, if there was an air traffic control issue, maybe miscommunication over radio transmission, maybe a lack of communication over radio transmission. Maybe there was a problem with the radio signals whatsoever, but they end up colliding into each other. And we only know that because we found, like you said, like the other story, we found the wreck of it. There was some evidence of the wreck. There's not evidence of why it happened or why 2 well-trained USAF pilots and co-pilots were able to crash these giant planes into each other in Bermuda Triangle. And when the investigation was taking place, they claimed that actually one of the wrecks was 160 miles away from the other wreck. So they crashed into each other and yet ended up 160 miles apart, which is highly unlikely. You can drift a plane and glide it for a pretty long time with no gas, even if you have one engine. But if you crash it into another plane that big, you're not going to end up probably 160 miles away, maybe over the course of weeks at a time. And the way that the tides are drifting, I don't really know enough about that to know that, but it does seem pretty odd that would happen. Now, the official United States Air Force reports that have been declassified do state that the second crash site was actually identified, and it was really just a mass of seaweed and driftwood. And the people who had originally investigated thought that was the second crash site, but they're mistaken. But I don't know, man. That seems like a weird thing to mix up, especially if your job is to go look at it. And I'm not saying that the U.S. Air Force is trying to make it seem less, or crazy or unexplained or whatever. But it does seem odd to me that they would say, "Oh no, that was just driftwood. It wasn't a KC-135 Stratotanker." I mean, you really couldn't mix the 2 up if they are being honest about that, because I had to look up how big it was because of our gorilla thing. I'm glad you brought it up.
How many gorillas?
So this thing is a fucking beast. A fully fueled up, meaning carrying fuel, KC-135 Stratotanker is 98,470 pounds. So that's even bigger than the planes we've talked about, the C-5 Galaxy on this podcast. And this thing weighs, I would say a ton, but it weighs multiple tons, nearly 100,000 pounds. It's wild. And it has a length of 136 feet, so that's not quite as big as those schooners, but that's pretty big for an airplane flying around in the sky. So 2 of those hit each other and go missing in the Bermuda Triangle. Rather, they crash land in there, and then maybe they were separated by miles. We don't really know. But if you did want to buy one of those things, I also looked up how much they cost, and it's only going to cost you a cool $35 to $39 million, depending on what year and what model you get. So pretty expensive accident. 2 of those $39 million planes go crashing in the ocean because they collide with each other. That's a strange accident and a definitely a fuck up if there wasn't something more to the story.
Yeah, that's insane. And two things: if you want to go see a KC-135, the New Hampshire Air National Guard is the East Coast, Northern East Coast hub for those guys. So
All
Keith
right.
Air Force Base, where our special guest Doug will be telling you about. later.
Yeah, we're gonna have a guest up later,
So
and he's gonna
you
mention
can
that.
drive up and see KC-135s on the line all day there.
Wow.
Taking off and landing, pretty sweet.
I mean, the amount of technology and force you have to apply to get something that weighs nearly 100,000 pounds up to that altitude, it just blows my mind.
Well, the crazy thing is the dry weight's probably significantly less. Gasoline, let's just compare it to water. Water weighs 8 pounds a gallon, and gasoline, these things are holding, thousands of gallons of fuel to multiple. Basically, if you ever have a combat situation, those are up in the air always, just like the AWACS and other stuff. So these guys they've got fuel tankers up there, aka the KC-135 for the Air Force, and they're always in range. So they have to have enough gas for themselves, and they're burning.
Yes, enough for themselves and to refuel multiple planes. Right.
Then have things going. And they refuel everything from stealth bombers to helicopters to literally F-16s to other bombers to other KC-135s, anything you want.
Yeah, it's amazing. Those things are crazy.
Yeah, so to have a communication error with two of those things hitting each other is just insane. I mean, what the hell?
I mean, it's very crazy.
Yeah, and they didn't find one of them. Oh no, they found them separately.
Well, they found two wrecks, but they apparently either, it depends on what side of the story that you ascribe to. One of them would say that they couldn't differentiate that there was actually two planes in the wreck because of how severe the wreckage was. They couldn't say it was two planes, or the case was that they found one plane clearly crashed 160 miles away from the other one, even though they had collided to cause the incident.
Weird. Very weird. You got to think maybe, I mean, at the very least, maybe there was a malfunction with their compasses or with their equipment.
I mean, it would have to be to a degree to crash those two things together. It wasn't just like driving two Mack trucks along the highway and then you blow a tire. I mean, there's so much space, so much communication, and these things are so expensive and so important that I can't imagine them just bumping into each other like that over such a big airspace. But that's the Bermuda Triangle for you.
Yeah. It's just too weird.
I say Barbados isn't bad. She says I'd love to see Bermuda. And I say, woman, are you mad? Bermuda Triangle. It makes people disappear. Bermuda Triangle. Don't go too near.
It's December 5th, 1945. We're going back a little bit, 6 months after the war ended. And we've got an experienced combat pilot named Charles Carroll Taylor who had 2,500 flying hours, mostly in the Grumman Avenger.
Which is the plane that is the star of this tale.
The Grumman Avenger. So you guys probably know where we're going with this. If you are anyone who's aviation or anybody who's interested in the paranormal or
The Bermuda Triangle.
This is Flight 19.
Flight 19.
5 Grumman TBM Avengers, and these are it's funny, I listen to other podcasts and most of them were wrong about this. It's not a fighter plane. This is a bomber.
Yes. Yeah, I knew that, but only because I played Battle Stations Midway, and that's why I know.
We fucking played that game.
Shout out not to a fighter plane.
Midway, the best game ever made.
Yeah, shout out to that game.
So good.
Please make another one.
Good.
Or at least re-release it for Xbox One because we got to play that shit. That was great. It was a great game.
We got to play that back, man.
But yeah, I mean, I think that obviously the layman might look at World War II planes and they might think that they look similar. They have a similar build to them. Now, when you look at a bomber versus a fighter, they're so distinctly different. It's easy to tell the difference in them. But back then, the planes were so similar just on the design, looking from the outside. If you get a little deeper, you'd understand they're much different. But I can see how the people have made that mistake. It looks kind of like a Hellcat if you don't know the difference between an Avenger and Hellcat.
Like a Hellcat, yeah. It's a little bit bigger, same color, more armor.
Right.
Probably a similar engine. They use the Wasp engine, which is like a double radial. But yeah, so other podcasts who aren't aviation savvy, they all said it was like a one of them said it was a fighter jet. It literally said that. I was like, definitely not. But the Grumman Avenger is quite similar in role to the FA-18 Hornet of nowadays. This is a carrier-based bomber or torpedo bomber that could shoot down another airplane if it had to.
Mm. It still has the capabilities to fire on other airplanes, but its primary focus was bombing, and particularly torpedo bombing, naval warfare.
Yep, exactly.
So when you're practicing using this thing, you're going to have to do a lot of flights over the open ocean because its main job is flying over the ocean. And the flight that we're talking about today, Flight 19, is a training flight with 5 of these planes going at the same time, led by Lieutenant Charles Taylor. And they're supposed to do a navigation exercise to fly out into the Atlantic, taking off from Fort Lauderdale, hit a couple of checkpoints, come on back home and land. And as we find out that the tale goes, and as we know from the Bermuda Triangle, it does not end the way that they expected to begin with.
Exactly.
So yeah, before we hop into the story, we're gonna, like Dylan said, we like to be a little bit more savvy on our podcast. We're not just a couple of guys shooting the shit about airplanes, acting like the Avenger was a fighter plane. Come on, we do a little more research in that. So we decided to bring in a person who has experience with aviation and has flown planes as recently as last week. He's not a military pilot himself, but he's went to school to learn how to fly and to learn how to be an air traffic controller. So we're going to bring him along and talk to him for a little bit. You folks, ask him a couple of questions about aviation, ask him what he thinks about Flight 19, and then we're going to break down Flight 19 for you guys, and then we're going to decide for ourselves what the hell we think happened and what went wrong with the whole thing. So we're going to throw to him now. It's going to act like it's just the same as now. We're going to pop him right in there. You'll see us talk to Doug Fiorentino about Flight 19 and about what it's like to fly a single prop airplane in the Atlantic Ocean and over Florida. Take it away, Doug.
Bermuda Triangle.
All right, now time to talk about the most interesting, in my opinion, and our favorite of these cases of the Bermuda Triangle disappearances, and that is Flight 19. That's the whole thing that got us started on this journey of wanting to look more into the Bermuda Triangle. And for that, we love to have guests on this podcast. We decided to bring in a person who knows almost as much about planes as Dylan does, and maybe even more about being a pilot as him. And that's Doug Fiorentino. You mind saying hi to us, Doug?
Hey, how are you guys? Joe, Dylan, thanks for letting me be here, and kind of honored to be on my first podcast, quite frankly.
Well, we're glad to have you on, and the honor is all ours, truly. I'm really excited to talk to you on here, and I'm glad that you wanted to be on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us, Doug.
Hey, Dylan. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
So a couple of questions for you, Doug. So we know that maybe this all got started because you went to Daniel Webster College in New Hampshire. Is that correct?
The now defunct Daniel Webster College. Absolutely. That was way back in the day. In the mid-90s, I started in an aviation program up there. And it was kind of like a combined program. It was air traffic control, and you could fly if you wanted. And I was in the air traffic control program, and I learned to fly back then. So unfortunately, it's not a college anymore, but I don't know if my degree means anything or it's even a degree anymore.
I think it still counts.
But anyway, yeah, that's where I went.
That's cool. What was the first plane you flew?
The first plane that I ever flew was a Clyde Cessna 152. So it was the 2-seater trainer that Cessna developed. And then this school actually had it was a French built Cap 10. It was an aerobatic plane that they put into their program. And then they had some motor gliders. So they had some gliders that actually had a motor on them. So you didn't need to be pulled up by another airplane. You could just spin the prop and go up on your own. And then they teach you unpowered flight and that kind of stuff. But I never got that far in the program because I switched to air traffic control. So what I did is I just flew the 172 until I got my license. I mean, the 152 until I got my license. And then progressed to the 172, which is a 4-seater, same type of airplane as the 152, but just got 4 seats.
Nice. We'll throw up a picture now so everyone knows what that looks like. So we can kind of picture it going forward there. It's pretty good.
Cool.
All these things. That's cool,
Yes.
Doug. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
yeah. So now that we've got our aviation expert on here,
That's right.
got
See, everyone on the show is an expert besides us. So you don't have to, you can feign modesty all you want, Doug, but that counts as an expert to us. So yeah, I thought we'd ask you a couple questions about aviation before we get into Flight 19, so we know what we're looking forward when we actually tell the story of what's going on here. So my first one for you is what are some of the reasons why planes end up going down in the first place? Is it mostly pilot error? Is it sometimes malfunction of the plane itself, or what do they teach you that this are the things you should look out for when it comes to being safe up there?
Well, some of the stuff that happens that causes plane crashes is one, it is pilot error. It could be a safety issue where you didn't pre-flight the airplane correctly, or there was something wrong with the airplane, you didn't know about it. Or there could be a malfunction in, if you're flying under just instrument flying, if there's a malfunction in the instruments, or you get disoriented. How do you say that actually?
Disoriented. Yep.
Disoriented with the instrumentation that you're flying under bad weather. That's a problem. And I mean, you could actually fly into a mountain, and it's called controlled flight into terrain, where you don't even think you're low enough to fly into some type of, mountain or a hazard like an antenna or something that's in front of you. And you could actually do that because you're so disoriented. So a lot of times it's a combination of stuff. It's pilot error, it's weather conditions, or it's just the airplane's too complex for you to fly, and you're flying something that you shouldn't be flying. That's kind of what happened with JFK Jr. He was flying a complex airplane in bad weather.
Oh, okay. So that's kind of a combination of too many things at the same time. There's a lot of bad news there. So yeah, he wasn't prepared for it. And then you have bad weather added in there, a recipe for disaster, in other words.
It is. It was. It was. When he took off from New York to go to Martha's Vineyard, I believe, or Nantucket, one of the two. Yeah. But to answer your question, yeah, I mean, it can be a combination of things. Weather, complexity of the airplane, or it could be pilot error.
Yeah. So Joe, you got some more questions for Doug? Because I got a couple too as well. I'm excited to ask.
Sure. Yeah. Do you have any idea about why a compass would malfunction normally? Obviously, there's always a chance that it's just broken in the first place. But a lot of the times we're looking at these stories in the Bermuda Triangle, compasses that are working regularly under normal circumstances seem to not be working properly in that area. Maybe it's just a timing issue, that it's just wrong place, wrong time. It just happened to malfunction there. But I can't think of why exactly a compass would malfunction like that and stop working in the middle of a flight.
Yeah, I mean, when the things like the only thing I could think of is there's some kind of magnetic issue in a certain area where it affects a magnetic compass. It affects how that compass actually operates. And there has been, some speculation in that area of the world where there is some type of disturbance magnetically when it comes to, instruments. They're saying that, there's some kind of what's called ocean flatulence, that there's methane gas coming up from the ocean potentially that affects, instrumentation. I don't know. I've never had a compass fail when I was flying. I know that there's been erratic behavior of a compass when I flew once, because depending on where you're turning from the north or the south, the compass either lags or spins ahead of where you actually are. So for instance,
it's almost like it's overcompensating.
It overcompensates itself. So you got to kind of take that into account if you're using a compass when you're turning from, say, north to south or from south to north. Other than that, I don't really know what the Avenger had as far as instrumentation. But I do know there was redundancy built in, and there was compasses. There was several.
Yeah, they have multiple compasses on board every Avenger. Yeah, so it has to be more than one failing at the same time.
Right.
For all.
And I don't know if they had a what's called a directional gyro or an actual gyroscope that helps you. When you're on the ground, you essentially set that to the compass heading, and it's a gyro, and it's a little bit more accurate. So I don't know if they had that, but that's all I can think of, Joe, really.
So you're right on topic of like one of my questions. So when you set a heading, because like a big part of the whole story with these guys in Flight 19 is that, they go from A to B to C to D to E to F and then back to like Fort Lauderdale. And they set different headings based off of, what direction they want to go in, like 050 or all in a 360-degree matter. Is that all magnetic, or is there some other way? Because again, you think the airplane's here and it goes in 360 degrees this way, and you set a heading based off of, north, south, east, and west. That's all magnetic?
It's all based on the magnetic compass. So before you take off, you actually set, because I have a directional gyro, I'm going to set my directional gyro that looks like a compass to whatever the magnetic compass heading is on the ground. And usually you're looking at that when you're in the air to make sure that they're kind of close. There's going to be a little bit of variation, couple of degrees off, but back then it's all magnetic headings. And it depends on how they're actually navigating. So what I was reading, and I don't know what you guys research that you guys found, but when I was reading on Flight 19, it was basically essentially about the compasses and about the instrumentation. I don't know what else they did to try to figure out where they were. Did they use what's called pilotage, or did they have a map and look at the terrain on the ground and use that? Did they use other type of form of navigation called beckoning, where they used the map, compass headings, wind variation, and that sort of thing to set where they were going? I'm not so sure.
But yeah, that leads me in. I was actually just going to ask you that specific question, Doug, if you don't mind. What is the difference between piloted and den reckoning as far as navigating where you're going to be going and keeping track of where you are, as opposed to, just plotting the course beforehand?
So this goes back a while, but if I remember my definitions, pilotage, what I used to do when I think of the definition of pilotage, I'm just looking at a map. I'm looking at a map and I'm looking at what I see outside under what's called VFR, or visual flight rules. And that's all I can fly because I'm not instrument rated pilot. So when I go up, in the olden days, I just had an actual map, like you get a AAA essentially.
Yeah.
And it's called a sectional map, and you just look at a map and you go back and forth from point to point based on what it looks like outside. Dead reckoning is you use the map, but then you use all kinds of other calculations. You calculate your route of flight, you calculate the wind along that flight, you calculate magnetic variation based on where you are in the world. There's some kind of variation based on magnetic north. And you calculate, like I said, you calculate winds, your direction of flight, and you put all this into a calculation, and you can figure out how long it's going to take you en route to get from point A to point B, or to some checkpoints that you have along the way. And then it'll actually allow you to figure out your actual time of arrival, or your ETA. So when you get up there, you can get your projected calculations, and then you can actually see how long it actually took you from point A to point B based on timing. And that's essentially dead reckoning.
So it's taking a lot more data points than just the map and looking around, and it gets more of an accurate picture of when you're going to show up and what you're supposed to be seeing at any given time. Just kind of more checking in, more like a radar that sweeps once every minute, or a radar that sweeps every second. The more information you can take in, the more you're going to know where you are at any given time and kind of orient yourself better. And
that's a really good analogy, Joe. I mean, you're taking in information to make sure that you're on the course that you're on, the course that you're supposed to be on. The winds could be different than what they were projected to being. So if you're off course a little bit, you can correct that by, knowing your airspeed and what your ground speed is going to be, and what your true airspeed on the airspeed indicator is. And you take that all into account once you get into the airplane and in your flight planning as part of a dead reckoning type flight planner. Now it's GPS. You put in the GPS coordinates, hit direct to, boom. It tells you heading, it compensates for the wind, and it'll tell you how long it's going to take you to get there.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, every time I've ever flown in the right seat, it's been basically just looking out the window, picking landmarks, and just moving from there to there to there. And it's actually been kind of stressful too, because the pilots that I've flown with are like, you need to also be looking for a place to land. So basically the next strip, the next runway, the next this, you kind of just pick different locations, kind of like they do if they fly, to Europe. You stay as close as you can to airports the whole entire way.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah, that's how it's been for me.
I got lost my first time I went on a solo cross country. They're called cross countries because they're like 50 miles. They're more than 50 miles from your home airport. I got lost. I was flying from, where did I fly from? Nashua to Albany, New York. So I went over the Berkshires. Mm-hmm. And then I was flying from Albany to Bridgeport, Connecticut. And that's where I got lost because Albany Air Traffic Control told me to do a couple of turns before I resume my own navigation. Once I resumed my own navigation, I had no idea where the hell I was.
Threw you off.
And I tried to just now, throw the dead reckoning on the seat, look at the map. And if you go to Connecticut, you'll know Bridgeport, Connecticut, and New London, I think Milford Airport kind of look the same. When you're a student and you got, 20 hours, 25 hours behind you, and you're shitting a solid gold brick because you don't know where you are.
Stressful.
That's essentially what happened when I was coming into Bridgeport. They're like, "You're not coming into Bridgeport, dude. You're probably over in New London." I'm like, "Oh yeah." So just tell me how to get to Bridgeport. I said I was a student pilot. I was lost. I didn't know where I was. You got to admit it. You don't want to admit it,
At that
But you
point,
gotta admit
the
it.
pride has to go out the window, or you're
Right.
gonna be in bigger
And,
trouble.
I
than
landed in
just-
Bridgeport, and got a Coke and went to the bathroom and said, "Man, I'll come home now."
Ooh, yeah,
Yeah.
right on.
Yeah,
I
it
didn't
happens.
know
It
that.
happens. And it's an uneasy feeling because you're like, "Shit, where the hell am I?" So I can't imagine 5 of these guys. What were there? 5 of the Avengers that were out there?
Yeah, there's 5 Avengers and there's 14 airmen in total.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what they were feeling.
Yeah,
When
it's
they-
gonna be something. And before we get on to like kind of the course and the other details, there's one thing that we didn't mention. So, and I want to know if you have this on your airplane or have ever used it before. They mentioned a bunch in the story, something called the YG or IFF, and its purpose is to triangulate. Have you ever seen or used one of those, or what's?
Never heard of it, never seen it. I mean, I feel kind of stupid because I haven't seen it or heard it, but no, I mean, the only navigational tools we had were the VOR, very high omni range radio signals. We had a non-directional beacon, which was like a radio beacon. You could actually tune in to a radio station and that you knew of, and you could kind of like figure out where that sound's coming from because it'll kind of tune
interesting.
into that.
Yeah.
But other than that, when I started to fly, I mean, unless this terminology has changed and it's actually the same thing, unless this Y, and I forgot what you had said, Dylan.
YG or IFF?
YG or IFF, if that's something like a rudimentary VOR or a non-directional beacon like an NDB, it could be. I just never heard that terminology. So
I also don't know what it is, but all I do know is based off of the story is that it's if you turn it on, it helps other airplanes or air traffic control triangulate your location.
So it's probably kind of like
Transmitting?
what's called a transponder nowadays.
Mhm.
An ABS transponder, which now it tells you, I mean, back in my day, it kind of gave you a signal, but now it tells you altitude, it tells you heading, it tells you traffic in the area, all that good stuff, these newfangled transponders. So
Very cool.
That's good to know. I only have 2 more questions before
sure.
we head on. Dylan, do you have any more questions to ask?
You mentioned a story about being a little disoriented based off of the way things look up there. Have you ever had what are some other interesting experiences you've had while in the air, whether it be seeing cool aircraft or something you didn't really recognize? Ever seen a UFO? Anything?
Yeah.
And a UFO doesn't mean a saucer. It just means something
Right.
like a bright light. I don't know.
When Pease Air Force Base in Portsmouth, New Hampshire was actually active, I was actually cleared when I was doing one of my student cross countries up to Portland, Maine from Nashua, New Hampshire. I actually got cleared over Pease and saw a couple of Air Force bombers. I think I saw like a couple of B-52s.
Oh, that's cool.
Always cool.
on the apron, and I believe there were FB-111s at the time. I didn't see a B-1B, but I saw, I think, an FB-111 sitting on the tarmac, and I got cleared over there so I could fly right over the Air Force Base. They knew where it was. They had me on the radar. Another interesting thing that happened is I actually went off the runway once. So like people, watching this podcast are saying, who the hell is this guy you got on here? This, jabroni that, gets lost and came off the runway.
Well, we didn't ask you all. Go ahead.
I can say like I have successfully taken, people flying and we've come back safely.
That's what I was going to say. You didn't tell all the boring stories where it was perfectly safe and perfectly decided the whole time. Those aren't make for good stories. So we could tell those all day, I'm sure. But
right.
Everyone has a couple of mistakes. What are you going to do? It's life.
So I was a student pilot up at Daniel Webster, Dylan, and essentially I was almost called a stage check. So we had to do these stage checks in the air to get to the next level. And it was a nasty crosswind. They only had one runway at Borefield, 3214. And coming in, I told the instructor that was testing me, I said, I can't handle this wind. It's too much. Can't handle it. He's like, you got to do it. So I did it, landed one wheel, first and the other wheel second, like you're supposed to in a crosswind, and couldn't handle it. The airplane went off the runway. And luckily I didn't hit a runway lights with one of my main landing gears or the nose wheel. We just went right off the runway. The prop is spinning now on the grass. And I just looked at him and said, I told you I couldn't handle this. And he had to be the embarrassed guy, taking
what
the
I
student.
tell you? Yeah.
everybody knows, right? That, I mean, the campus had 800 kids for goodness sake. And like, everybody knew that there was a plane that went off the runway. So luckily that summer, somebody that was an experienced pilot landed a Warbird gear up and broke the prop. So that's a little bit, more intense than me. So I felt better about myself at that point. But
Yeah. Oh yeah.
anyway, those are the experiences I've had. No UFOs though. Never saw that. Never saw anything like that.
Okay. All right. Those are awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Right on. Yeah, thank you. My last two questions are just what are some of the issues that pilots experience with a small single prop plane versus something like a commercial jet liner, those jumbo jets? I mean, there must be a difference between flying the two of them. Is it that weather affects them more, that wind affects them more? I know that usually it's a bumpier ride for the smaller plane versus a large plane. Is that the long and short of it?
Yeah, that is true, Joe. I mean, that's kind of what I thought off the top of my head right away when you asked the question. It's a bumpier ride because you're at lower altitudes. The jets can fly above the weather. If you can fly the small planes like a Cessna 172 or a Piper Cherokee, a PA-28 or something like that, or any type of small airplane, single engine piston airplane, you can fly in instrument conditions if you're rated to fly and the airplane's rated to fly. But it's harder to do because you're doing it all yourself. And you've got to be ahead of the airplane when you're flying instrument flying. When you're on a big jet, you've got two people, a man or women next to you, and they're sharing the duties. So they're sharing, the flying, they're sharing the communication duties. Whereas you're flying a small plane, you're doing everything yourself.
Right.
A lot of small planes now have autopilots, where big airplanes, it automatically has an autopilot. And some of the autopilots and some of the big airplane can actually land the airplane itself. They can actually come in 0-0 weather, meaning zero visibility, and zero ceiling, meaning not zero ceiling. You can't see the runway essentially, and the airplane can land itself. So so small plane can't do that. So those are some of the differences.
Wow.
Plus, it's easier. They can handle more wind too. Actually, when you land, it's easier to land.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the best thing you want to do is try to take all the variables out of a flight. And if you can automate most of the procedures, you have less and less chances for pilot error to happen, or you wouldn't consider a pilot error if you have zero visibility, but the plane can still fly itself either way. That's pretty phenomenal that they can develop.
Yeah. I mean, I think of a couple stories. Doug mentioned people just flying into mountains without even knowing, zero visibility. And I hiked Camel's Hump Mountain in Vermont, and the whole purpose was to find a crashed B-24 that crashed right after or during the war, after the war. It just they're flying, B-24. Doug, I think, is that the 2 engine or the 4 engine? I always get the 24 and 25 mixed up.
I think that's now you had to ask that question, didn't you? I think that's a 4 engine. I think.
Because one kind of one of them is nimble and fun, and the other one's big,
the workhorse.
Hard to flies like this the whole time.
Yep.
Dog and the B-24 Marauder and the B-25 Liberator.
Yes, I think that's what they are.
I don't remember which is which, but it's the 24. And exact thing happened. Snowstorm. Pilots all didn't even know they died. Just
wow. Last thing you thought is that we're just cruising along and the mountain's right in front of you.
Yep.
Terrifying.
And so they removed most of the wreckage from there, but one of the wings in the whole entire thing is still there, and it's close to the top.
Really?
You pretty much have to walk over it. I was looking for a crashed airplane, maybe it's been 75 years, maybe it's under dirt, and I was I have a feeling we're probably gonna have to literally climb over this thing if we find it. And sure enough, we turned a corner. And I was that's it. There's no question.
There's no mistaking that.
That's zero mistaking that is a 30 or 40 foot airplane wing. No question. Sorry, maybe 60 feet? I don't know, but it's very long.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's craziness.
But they all unfortunately died. They just hit a mountain, didn't even know.
Right. Didn't even know it.
Didn't even know.
I mean, that might be better off than being stuck in a mountain with a blizzard with a broken leg, though. And if you have to pick either one of them.
I'd like the challenge rather than just not even knowing.
But True survivor, man. Braver than I. I'd rather just shut off the lights and not have to try to worry about getting frostbite.
Shut off and that's it. Yeah, exactly.
Like that.
I hope we don't have to find out. If anyone here is getting a B-24, let's hope we don't have to live this out.
Of course.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't want that to ever have to happen. I always think that when I'm in the airplane where I get in the emergency exit row and they ask you, are you willing to perform the task? I'm like, sure, I'll try, but I'm pretty sure we're all going to die anyways. So it doesn't really matter if I can do it or not, right? Maybe I can do it.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
can do
know.
it.
We'll see.
You'll
Seems
be able to
easy
do
enough.
it. And the
I feel like
person
most people
behind
do
you
it
is
as long
like,
as you're not a kid. Yeah, in
Right.
panic mode. Yeah, everyone's freaking out.
Hey,
So yeah, I just had one last question for you, and it's and you can take a minute to think about it. But what is probably your favorite feat you pulled off of flying a plane? Something that you impressed yourself with, that you're kind of proud of, and say like, oh yeah, when I did that, that was pretty good. Even for being modest about it, but it was pretty good.
probably just recently, probably like 2-3 weeks ago. First
Mm-hmm.
time I flew a Cherokee. And
what's a Cherokee? Tell us what a Cherokee
It's
is.
a Piper Cherokee, which is PA-28, low wing, wings on the bottom.
Wings on the bottom. There,
Never flew or that type of airplane, and it handles a little bit differently. There's some different characteristics in it. I had a really good instructor that I was with. He's got a lot of time and a lot of different planes, and it was kind of windy, and the landings were really good. But I actually did stick the landings really, really good here in Orlando. But again, what happens when you land is you get really good, and you go through periods where you're landing really well, and then all of a sudden you'll hit one landing and it'll just completely, you think you just ripped the landing gear off the airplane. So I just happened to be in a good time frame where I was landing the airplane both high wing and low wing relatively well, and then a month before that I couldn't land the plane I mean there was one where I literally hit the ground hard. I was like, shit, I think I might have an insurance claim here. But when I flew the Cherokee for the first time, I stuck the landing. So I was pretty proud of that.
Nailed it. And actually, we'll put the link up so people can check it out. There's a fully edited video with GoPros on the wings and inside the plane with him and his instructor rather. You can see him actually doing that exact task. I'm glad you said that one, because the folks, if they want to watch it, they can see for themselves. Not easy to do, but pulled it off.
Yeah, no, Ludix is he's a good guy, and he's a good instructor, and he helped me through landing. And the last part of that actual video is crazy what he did with that airplane. So yeah, I would encourage anybody to do that, because he basically pulled the throttle at 650 feet or whatever, did like a 180-degree turn, almost 180-degree turn, and landed on a runway. So it was pretty impressive. So.
I'll bring it around, simulate that we're doing like a left turn out here. Love this move. And man, we're doing a left turn out, and then all of a sudden, what's just happened? All right, we lost the engine. Okay, 73 knots is what I'm going for. Nice little accelerated stall there. There's my 73 knots. I'm bringing it all the way around into 3-1 if I can. We're looking good. I know I'm a little bit high, but I've got a pretty big, hefty turn to do onto final, but at least I'm going directly towards the numbers, or going towards the runway. I know I've made the runway, first notch of flaps, second notch of flaps. I know we're going to be high. I can bring my last notch of flaps in, and just bring it in for 3-1. We made the runway, man. Wow. Here it is. Nothing saying that it has to be pretty.
Good morning, Orlando.
It's just got to be safe. Airspeed's perfect. We're in line for the runway. I'm pleased with that, brother.
LA Team 2, we're over. LA Team,
I'm happy.
LA Team ramp with information.
And we got no power, just bring it in. It's in center line.
Team 2, hold your position. LA Team 2, hold position.
Let it settle. There she goes.
What a move. Love that move.
That's sick, brother. I'm happy with
Love
that.
that move.
32042.
Wow.
Yeah, I would encourage you to watch a video.
You were in the plane for that?
I was watching it. It was crazy. Like, we're in what was called the traffic pattern to land on a certain runway. They cleared us to land on a different runway because he wanted to practice this. And we were about 650 feet and 700 feet, somewhere around there. And pulled the throttle back, unpowered flight right into the runway. It sounds kind of like, that's not a big deal, but at 650 feet, when you have no power,
It sounds like a big deal.
it's a big deal.
Doesn't sound easy
and
to me.
I'm watching this and I'm like, yeah, this is pretty cool, man. This is why you're good. So anyway,
Yeah.
it was good.
And that dovetails pretty well into the story of Flight 19, because those are the kind of things that pilots have to undergo as part of their training to make sure that anything that comes their way, they're prepared for it, because you never know what's going to happen in the airplane, whether it's instruments failing, whether it's the plane failing itself, or unforeseen events. you're going to have to train all the time to be that well. That's why it makes sense that he would say, hey, if you don't mind, I have a little time to practice this maneuver, which people who are obviously fly for the Navy, the Air Force would need to practice things like that all the time because they're going to be in extreme situations. And you don't want to go down just because of something like that happening. You want to be able to pull it off. And that takes a lot of practice.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. Very well said.
That's
Very
awesome.
well said.
So Doug, so how long has it been since you've flown in the Bermuda Triangle?
We went over the Bermuda Triangle in a Southwest 737 last year. We flew from Orlando to San Juan. So coming from, I think that's part of the triangle, because what is it? Miami to Bermuda to
Puerto
San
Rico.
Juan, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
you can't avoid it if you're going from Florida to Puerto Rico. You have to go through the Bermuda Triangle.
Yep. So yeah.
Any weather?
I mean, no weather, clear the whole way.
Clear. Any clear air turbulence?
No CAT, no.
CAT.
Nope, none actually. It was actually a smooth flight. There were people wearing masks, and this was right before COVID. We're like, why are these people wearing masks on the plane? Little did we know.
I had the same thing. I probably flew through just the corner of the BT in a so Spirit flies Airbus, so I was in like an A330 Neo off of the east coast of Florida going into Orlando in like a week or two before the travel ban for COVID, and like 10% of people on the plane had masks on, and I was like, I don't know. But I was with my brother, and we were half my family was in Orlando, and I remember that too. Same thing. I was like, wow, the mask thing's happening. People are doing it. The girl next to me was coughing. I was freaking out.
Right, exactly. And your family was in Orlando?
Yeah, my Uncle Bill, Joe's
really?
my Uncle Bill, my cousin Dominic, and their girlfriends and husbands and wives, and my dad. These are my dad's brothers, and my dad's other brother Scott and his family and his kids and their kids and everything. They live in Ocala.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, cool. We were just in Ocala not too long ago.
Yeah.
Not too far
Ocala.
from
my Uncle Scott's been there since like the mid '80s.
Wow. Does he have horses?
I believe he's retired now, but he's worked on a horse ranch his entire life.
Yeah, I mean that's big time up there when it comes to horses. They do a lot of training.
Yeah, he was a trainer, and then he kind of did the whole horse thing.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, it's a cool place. We were there I was down for a wedding. My cousin they got married in Vegas, then came and had their thing at my uncle's place in Ocala, and it was a blast. Love that. That's Florida.
Yeah, cool. Excellent.
Yeah, cousin in Tampa. I forgot about that.
It's time for you to come down there at some point, right?
It is.
Again?
It's been a year, and I'm looking forward to it. So.
Yeah, exactly. I don't blame you. Absolutely.
Yeah, some of the best food I've ever had in my life, and it was Orlando. Miss it. And then Joe probably knows too, but we're a little off topic now, but when I worked,
that's par for the course for the podcast, though. Feel free.
It is. This all comes in, but I used to go to Orlando like every month or every other month for work.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was down at the. Little do they know, there's a IndyCar track in Orlando that IndyCar never got to use, but they built it for like an IndyCar series in the 60s, 70s, or 80s.
No kidding.
Yeah, Magic Kingdom parking lot. Look left next time you're there. You're gonna see a speedway you never even knew was there, but it's real. There's an actual IndyCar track. Yeah,
there used to be an airport there. I know that near the monorail between Epcot and Magic Kingdom, but I didn't know there was an InDcar park. IndyCar track. Wow.
Yeah, it's a mile oval. And they do
it's too bad Loudon already took the Magic Mile as their name. Obviously, the Magic Kingdom should have the Magic Mile for that.
Magic Mile, right?
Yeah, they should have that.
Funniest thing. That is exactly who should have got the Magic Mile. Disney.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Disneyland. But I used to go down there for work because we hooked up all they've got actual NASCARs and then like Ferraris and stuff, and I did the communication systems in them. But I used to have to go down there all the time because they never worked. So.
No kidding.
Yeah,
cool.
Very cool. So I have a lot of time in Orlando.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah. So.
Oh, nice.
Where
I mean, Doug, thanks a lot for coming on and talking to us about planes, lending us some of your legitimate knowledge that we can kind of leech off of and bring it into our podcast and make a more legitimate podcast than we usually are. Nice.
and Doug, while you're here, what do you think happened to these guys?
Yeah, what do you think happened here?
We've got a seriously experienced guy.
Yeah.
The Charles Taylor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Who was a combat pilot in the Pacific, who had a couple of problems, in the history of ditching airplanes in the sea in the Pacific. And then a bunch of other, relatively experienced with a couple hundred hours. What's the deal?
So the speculation that when I was reading, and it sounds kind of interesting and it sounds very plausible, is that he originally was stationed in Miami. Then he went to Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale. Now, I don't know if this makes any sense because Lauderdale and Miami are pretty close together. But the original route of flight, he did all kinds of things like you were saying, Dylan. He had, several different segments of the flight. But apparently, in a couple of different things I read, that he got so disoriented that he thought the Bahamas could potentially be the Keys, meaning Key West, the archipelago from Miami down to Key West.
Luckily, because they have a record of those transmissions, we know what he was thinking on each step of the journey, where if we didn't have that, it'd be anyone's guess. But we at least know that at some point in the journey, he was convinced he was over the Keys, which is one of the reasons why he got so off course. Because if you think you're south of Florida and you're actually far east of Florida, that's a whole different animal.
And I think that's what happened. It combined with the known malfunctions of their instrumentation, i.e. the compasses. If he legitimately, and the Keys look differently, so I don't know if he could actually see, below him. I don't know. The weather was suspect, but if he could actually see the Keys look dramatically different than the Bahamas. I mean, they're just the geography is totally different. But it doesn't matter if he got disoriented and you're making bad decisions, you're sweating, you don't know what you're doing. You got other guys that are relying on you.
Right.
And he flew northeast, like you said, Joe. He was south of the peninsula, and he thought he was south of the peninsula. And flying northeast from the Keys would get you back to, the Florida Peninsula.
Yeah,
that's what he did. And someone convinced
him. But if you're over the
to
Bahamas, you're going to get in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean if you do that, which is going to be an issue.
So disorientation, not knowing where he was, instrument malfunction, and then obviously the lack of fuel, because now you're burning fuel, and then then you're done. So that's what I think. I think he just became so disoriented that he didn't have the instruments that he needed, and he was disoriented, and he just didn't know where it was, and he didn't know what to do. So that's my 2 cents.
It's a well thought out conclusion to the story of Flight 19.
Right on.
You guys can hash it out and see what you think, and I'll watch the podcast to see what happens. To see what you guys think.
What we think.
That's awesome.
That's exactly right. So hey, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I really do.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being on.
It's an honor.
And we love to have experts on here as much as we can. So we appreciate it, Doug, and maybe we'll see you next time.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Take care, gentlemen. Have a good one.
So that was great. Yeah, exactly. It was pretty informative. Like I said, he adds legitimacy to the podcast. And Dylan knows a lot about airplanes, but it's always good to have someone else in here who knows what his jargon around that and talking about Flight 19. So now I think we'll hop into the nitty gritty, each individual subject of what actually happened on Flight 19, from some soup to nuts, as they say, or from nose to tail, more of a airplane-based metaphor.
Yeah. So, if you don't mind, I'll start off on this one because there's some.
Please, let's get going.
So we've got the Grumman Avenger, 5 of them, led by flight leader, United States Navy Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, with 2,500 flying hours, mostly in that aircraft, and some of those hours in combat in the Pacific.
That's a lot of practice. Kind of thinking, how many hours do you have driving in your particular brand of car? It would be a lot of driving to get up to 2,500 hours, and that guy has not only that much experience in the air, but most of it in that particular plane. So this guy's no spring chicken, and he knows how to fly this thing. And that's why he's leading this training exercise outside of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, into the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, exactly. And as mentioned, this exercise is super simple. It's a combination of tactics and navigation. They're flying east out of Fort Lauderdale to Bermuda, drop a couple bombs, head north to a checkpoint, head west to another checkpoint, north to another checkpoint, fly back to Fort Lauderdale. It's pretty simple.
That's the idea.
It's a majority.
It's simple idea. Yeah, they've done this type of training mission. I'm sure Taylor did this exact training mission probably multiple times himself. And many people who are flying out of Fort Lauderdale would do this exercise as a way to get used to the idea of flying missions like that and get used to flying the Avenger in conditions that would be conducive to that part of the world.
Yeah, exactly. And this seems pretty simple because it's a majority of 90-degree and 45-degree turns.
So very right angles, are, as it were, like that. The 45-degree, 90-degree, 180. It's all on those dials where you're not, not a lot of room for screwing up because you're just going on those different hands of the clock, basically, and it makes it a lot easier to orient yourself in the mission.
Exactly. And we didn't mention earlier, but Lieutenant Taylor was also an instructor in this type of airplane as well. So this really genuinely is an experienced guy.
Yeah.
So it starts off training mission mixed with navigation and bombing, and it really comes down to one conversation. And
like we mentioned in the talk with Doug, we do luckily have a record of the conversation going back and forth between Charles Taylor and the radio tower at Fort Lauderdale, so we can see step by step what was going through his head. And we didn't know the exact location of the planes because we didn't have GPS tracking at the time, so we're not exactly sure where they were. But upon looking back, we have a pretty good idea of what actually went down there, even though we don't have any video evidence of it or GPS evidence.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know. This is 1945, so we lack a lot more information.
Right.
They did have enough technology. They did have triangulation tools, and they did have other people in the air to help identify where they are. But it starts off with a couple conversations. Again, things should have been routine, but an unidentified crew member asks another crew member and asks another student for his compass reading. And that student, last name was Powers. And just for reference, Powers his name was E.J. Powers, United States Marine Corps, and his gunner, or the guy in the back seat, was Howell Thompson.
Those sound like a couple of fucking flyboys if I ever heard one. A.J. Powers and Howell Thompson. I'll fly with them.
George Peonessa.
Right.
Says that this is a 3-person aircraft.
Yeah, that's how we end up having 14 people on this training mission, where you'd imagine that mostly you'd be one person flying a plane. There's 5 guys on the mission, but there's actually 14 altogether. And one of the planes was not fully crewed with 3 people.
Yep, exactly. So E.J. Powers is the pilot. Hal Thompson is probably the navigator. George Panessa is likely the gunner, Marine Corps. And what happened? This all started off with is someone asked Powers for his compass reading, and he said, "I don't know where we are. We must have got lost after the last turn." And keep in mind, all 5 of them stayed together the whole time. They didn't break off.
That's right. They were all grouped up for the entirety of the training mission.
Yeah. And then another pilot, last name Cox, transmitted, "This is FT-74, planar boat calling Powers. Please identify yourself so someone can help you." The response after a few moments was a request from the others in flight for the suggestion. And then Lieutenant Taylor came on and said, "FT-28, this is FT-74. FT-74 is the flight leader. What's your trouble?" And Powers replied, "Both of my compasses are out."
Both of them. So like Doug mentioned, there's a redundancy even with just the navigation. So even if one compass wasn't working, they had a backup compass, and both compasses weren't working.
Yep, exactly.
What the hell's going on there?
So, and he replied, "I am trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know where. I don't know." So I guess, sorry. This is Taylor's reply. This is the flight leader.
Yes.
I am trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down, and I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale. So I want to talk about this segment for a second.
Yes, we should definitely break this down because this is where the trouble begins.
Super important. So this is so weird because, again, they confirmed everybody dropped their last bomb basically in the Bahamas, which is 40 miles west of Miami.
Right.
Maybe 70 miles.
We'll bring up the map just for the folks so we can kind of see a picture of what's going on here.
70 miles because I don't think it's.
But yeah, so an easy way to figure it out is that Florida, if that's our center, the Bahamas is way out east of that, and the Keys is directly south of Florida. Actually, now you can even drive to the Keys. They built a bridge right there, so it's that close to Florida. And a person who has that much flight time and instruction out of Fort Lauderdale, like Charles Taylor, would be able to recognize the Florida Keys relatively well because he's probably flown over them hundreds of times.
Well, my first thing is the only thing that makes me think that this guy thought he was over the Florida Keys after their last turn, dropping bombs. Because it was like, hey, he had to ask permission to drop his last bomb, drop the bomb, and then this all happened. You made a major mistake to think you're in the Keys, or your exhaust valves are fucking blocked or something like that. You shouldn't. That is so far from where you are supposed to be.
Yes.
It's insane. So for him, a seriously experienced combat pilot who has 2,500 hours flying this airplane, is an instructor, thinks that he's hundreds of miles where he is, within
way off
minutes of where he should be.
I mean, if you were aiming back, you'd hit Fort Lauderdale well before you get to the Keys, even just if you were on the right course timing wise. Never mind the fact that you're completely south when you think you're supposed to be all the way out east.
Insane. I mean, it's really like saying, hey, we're supposed to be in you're supposed to be in Boston and saying you're in Philly. I mean, it's it's not worse. Quite frankly. So, and
again, this is taking our concept of odd events happening. We always say you don't always want to have one witness. Now we have 14 witnesses, and they're all flying in this formation, and they're all completely off course together. So we have more eyeballs, more brains on this, and somehow they believe, or at least Taylor believes, that they're over the Florida Keys, and they should be headed towards Fort Lauderdale. They must have missed it on the way there, if that's the case.
Yeah. It's totally crazy. So then this FT-74, which might have been a flying boat, informed the
flight group
controllers that this flight might be lost, and then advised Taylor to put the sun on his port wing on his left side.
Yes, and that is a very important part of the story too. So if you put the sun on your port wing, for us normies, that's the left wing of the plane if you're sitting in the cockpit. If you put the sun on the west side, or on the left side, the port side, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. It's a good way to know that we're going to be heading west, and you'll keep that as part of it. So if you're in the Keys and you keep the sun on your port wing, you'll make sure that you're heading straight up north, because that way the sun's to the west of me. I'm headed north. In no time now, over the Keys, I'll start to hit southern Florida. I'll go over Miami, and it's just a short hop, skip, and a jump to Fort Lauderdale. From there, I'm home free.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But if he thinks he's over the Keys when he's really over some other K or another group of islands, real problem here. So he might have taken the advice and said, "I'm gonna put the sun on my port wing," when you're north of the Bahamas, not in the Florida Keys.
Yeah, and that's what I believe that happened. And looking back now, it seems to be that way, that he was actually over the Bahama Islands. And if you keep the sun on your port wing, if you're in the Bahamas, the only thing you're hit is not going to be Miami. It's going to be more Atlantic Ocean. If you go straight up, you can probably hit part of Nova Scotia, or maybe even the North Pole if you keep heading straight there with enough fuel. So if you're in the Bahamas, you do not want to go north to get home. You want to go far west. And instead, he's headed north.
Yep, exactly. And then just to make things worse, the next step is that he took a heading of 030 degrees, which would 360 degrees be north? I mean, at that point, what would 030 be?
I'm not sure. I don't understand that.
In minutes, it's like 3 minutes past midnight. I think 030 would be.
Okay, yeah, so that would be very close to just being.
I don't know that. I'm just assuming. Because he wanted to make sure that he's not flying over, basically the Gulf of Mexico. So overall,
right, because at that point you don't want to be heading too far west, because then now you're heading over the Gulf instead of.
He thinks he's on the west coast of Florida when he's actually in the Bahamas.
So he's even now farther than the Keys. He believes that he is. Like I said, on the Gulf Coast of Florida, which is even farther west, where we think that now, looking back, that he might have been even farther east, never mind over Florida. So this is getting way out of whack at this point. He's heading the totally wrong direction.
Really out of whack. But the crew members...
Nearly the opposite.
The crew members are panicking a little bit. They're telling him to fly east. No one really knows what's going on. Taylor can't switch frequencies. He wants to keep his planes intact. The IFF, which is like a triangulation device, isn't on or isn't working. He was supposed to, he's trying to turn his transmitter for YG, which is that triangulation thing.
Yeah.
And he advised his crew to change due east for 10 minutes. And then somebody in the crew said, "Damn it! If we could just fly west, we could get home. Head west, damn it."
So that particular individual, actually looking back now, had it right, because if they are that far east and they could just head west, they would eventually hit the mainland Florida, and from there it would be a lot easier to triangulate where Fort Lauderdale is and use the navigation tools like Dead Reckoning to find different spots, find out your airspeed. You'll be able to find your way back home just fine. But if you're in the open ocean and you have no landmarks to tell you where you are, or if the landmarks you do see you believe are completely different landmarks, you're screwed. So at some point there, this guy had it right that we should head west and we'd be able to get home.
Exactly.
But these guys are, we can't overstate this. They are following the command. He's the flight leader and he has the most experience. I mean, it's almost like stepping on a line. It's easy to look back and in hindsight be like, why wouldn't you guys just pull off the group and say, this is the way to go? I'm not going to get lost here. But you're trusting this guy. And as we'll find out for the rest of the story, they're a unit and they're a military flight unit. You don't just go abandon your leader and you don't abandon your crew either. You fly together no matter what happens.
Mm-hmm. And I think that they're allowed to at this point if they want to, but 2 words describe everything you just said. And it's military discipline. That's
fall in line.
Yeah. So like, and then weather started to get worse. It started to get darker. Radio contact became intermittent, and
now things are starting to get extra dicey because at some point here we're lost. We're lost, and it's crazy. We still got plenty of fuel, but we're totally overspending how much time we need to spend on this mission. But when it starts to get darker and the weather starts to get dicey, the radio transmissions start to get more sporadic, and it starts to be harder to navigate. Now we have no longer a confused flight crew. We have an issue here. It's going to be a big issue. Yeah,
survival. This is
now a survival issue. They need to get home.
Life or death matter, and this is we're running out.
So I have here at 1,700 hours just to kind of get the actual time record here. So 1,700 hours. If 1,200 hours is noon, now we're at 7 o'clock at night, and it's
1,700 hours is 5 o'clock.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. 5 o'clock. So it's starting to get darker, but not so dark. But we're in December, and it's only a couple of weeks until the solstice, which is the darkest day of the year. So at that time, it's getting much darker. 5 o'clock, yeah. So every hour that ticks away now is getting more and more dark. And like I said, they don't have GPS, and it's not like you can shine a flashlight when you're on an airplane. The lights on an airplane are to show other planes where you are, not so you can see better on the land.
Yeah, there's no headlights on those puppers.
So the transmission at 1,700 hours is, quote for Taylor, it says, we'll fly 270 degrees west until landfall or running out of gas. This is the first time they are verbally communicating that they're worried about the amount of fuel that they have in the planes because they've been flying much longer than they expected. They didn't even expect to probably run out half a tank. They take off fully fueled. Quick flight exercise. Of course, you always have extra fuel in case something goes wrong. But at this point, it's starting to be an issue if they're going to have enough fuel to make it home. And they start heading west, which is the right thing at this point, but it doesn't always up that way.
Yep, exactly. And so at that point at 1804, so we're probably 30 minutes later than when Joe last said something.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor,
30 minutes to an hour, somewhere around there. Not long after, but long enough that you'd be getting nervous after that much time and still not knowing what's going on here. It's still an issue.
Yeah, these boys, these Avengers are thirsty. They don't.
They
don't just sip it, So he radioed to his flight, holding 270. We didn't fly far enough east. We may as well just turn around and fly east again.
Right. So now he's doubling back of the mistake and saying, no, it's kind of like getting lost in the woods. You go down the wrong path and you say, I think we saw this tree. We went in a circle. But actually, you're still headed in the same direction. They're completely messed up at this point, and the fuel is becoming an issue. Might as well turn around. This is getting dicey.
Yep, exactly. And so something's really fucking wrong with this guy. And so at this point, it's 1820, so 6:20 p.m.
Got to be getting dark at this point in Florida in December.
And his last message was received. And
I have the last transmission
message
at
was received at 1904.
1904. That's right. Yeah. So
He was heard saying
less than an hour after that.
Tell us, what do you say, Joe?
He said, all planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we'll all go down together, which is the standard operating procedure for a crew like that, because if you're going to have to go down, it's a lot harder to find one plane and one man alone than it is to find a whole group of planes. And it's part of that mentality, that discipline, that training. If one plane goes down, we all ditch together. We're all stuck together in the ocean. It'll be a lot easier to find us. And if we work together, it's a lot easier to survive out there. And hopefully we'll all make it home safe. So you don't just leave one plane behind when they ran out of gas first. When one plane goes down, the procedure is we all ditch together and we all go down together.
Yep, exactly. And on top of that, you guys can help each other survive. As somebody
right. Exactly. Yeah.
So sharks, you name it.
Oh man, yeah.
So that's not where the story ends, which is the craziest thing. There is no contact, no information. They're completely disappeared. It's as of today, the day after St. Patrick's Day in 2021, and not a freaking windshield has been found from these things.
Of course. So to follow the rest of the stories we have, that's what happens to Flight 19. We have no evidence of it ever happening. We have no evidence of any of the 14 members, any of the Avengers. The last transmission we have is him saying, if the push comes to shove, we're going to have to do this. But we don't even have a transmission of him saying, we're going to ditch now. We're approximately here. That's the last transmission we have. Maybe it's because the radio signal's cutting out because of the weather. We don't know. That's the last information we have from Flight 19, though. And as Dylan said, nary a propeller blade that I've ever found there.
But we do know.
But of course,
we know that their compasses were not reading accurately.
Yes, and that takes 5 planes that couldn't have the compasses reacting that way.
So,
but of course, you got to go looking for them now. That's the last transmission. You don't hear from them. You can't just leave them all out there to die. You got to go look for them.
Yep, exactly. So that night, a PBY seaboat was seaplane, which is one of the most famous and beautiful airplanes of all time.
We'll put a picture up of both the Avenger.
The PBY, because the PBY went out, didn't find anything, came back, nothing happened. But then they sent out 2 PB5Ms, not the PBY. This is the PB5M Mariner.
Yeah, I have the 2 PB5Ms were actually out on their own navigation training mission, and they diverted them in order to actually do a search and rescue for them. Yeah.
Yep, exactly what happened. So, so at first it was the PBY Catalina, just departed to search for Flight 19 and guide them back if they could be located. Yeah. And nothing came back. So then, yes, those Martin PBM Mariner flying boats were on their own training flight, diverted back, like Joe said, to go find them. And then they found them and everything was fine, right? They landed and they're glad they all landed together. They actually were pretty close to Fort Lauderdale, almost made it. But we already know the Bermuda Triangle by now, folks. It's been an hour into the podcast. No, what actually happened, Dylan? What actually happened? Walter G. Jeffrey of the PB5M and Harry, Roger, Lloyd, Charles, Robert, Wiley, James, John, Philip, James, Donald, and Alfred. 12 people plus Walter vanish.
Wow.
Like nothing ever happened.
And again, to this day, that entire flight crew that went to go search and rescue the Flight 19, also without a trace. We've never found any evidence of what happened to them too.
And the only explanation...
And they went looking specifically for Flight 19.
Yeah, and the only explanation on the report, and no wreckage, no nothing, no anything, completely missing, same day, same...
Again, another no radio transmission saying we're going down, we're approximately here. Nope, we don't have any information.
No whatever it is. And the U.S. Navy said that it just exploded.
Wow.
Well, that's insane. And the thing is, if it blew up, that's terrible and awful, and there's a lot of people in there. But there had to be something.
It had to be something beforehand. Yeah, and also I have one. The USS Solomons, as an escort carrier, reported losing radar contact with them before they ultimately went missing. But that was the last actual data we have of ever knowing where they are at any given point.
Yeah. So the Solomons, it actually started with the tanker, the SS Gaines Mill.
Okay. Yeah.
And they apparently said that they observed flames from an apparent explosion. About 100 feet high and burning for 10 minutes.
Wow.
at a certain position, and then Captain Shona Stanley reported unsuccessfully searching for survivals through a pool of oil and aviation gasoline. The escort carrier USS Solomon reported losing radar contact with an aircraft at the same position at the same time. So it might have just blown up. Yeah.
Yeah, it very well could have been.
Boats reporting avgas and explosions and radar contact being lost with somebody like that, but but there's still no debris, no bodies, no nothing.
You'd think you'd find something, especially if you witnessed the fire and smoke of an explosion, that you'd know where to look. But
yeah,
yeah.
Bermuda Triangle, don't go too near, go too near. Looking at it from my angle, do you see why I'm so sad? Oh, Bermuda Triangle, very bad.
Mystery continues. So I think it's time for us to really do the thing we usually do, is trying to parse all this information out and see what we really think of it. And there's a couple explanations of why all these disappearances are happening. Some of them are more grounded in, everyday events that happen, unfortunately, with sailing, using ships and using planes, flying. And some of them are a little bit more odd than that. So we think we should talk about the possible explanations for the disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, I agree, and I would like to start with like the more kind of out there possibilities.
Yeah, let's do it. It's our wacky, weird podcast,
Yeah,
because there's a
and
lot
my
of
first
explanations
is-
there that are very strange.
Yeah. The first one I want to talk about is a super well known. He's on a million different TV shows. Experience from a guy named Bruce Gernon, and he survived what he thinks Flight 19 went through. And Bruce Gernon is an instructor. He's a pilot. He's been a pilot for a very, very long time. He has a lot of experience, and was flying a Beechcraft Bonanza. And
That sounds like a good time.
yeah, it is. And Bonanzas are pretty sweet airplanes. And the reason being is they're just super unique and cool, and they have a V tail. So for a private aircraft, you look at anytime you see one that has a tail like this, instead of so Doug's flying a plane that has a tail like this, and it has a part in the back that moves like this or this, yaw left or right. The Beechcraft Bonanza has it like this, and it has pieces here on the back that do the same.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. The rudders, I guess. Yeah, the rudders.
Yeah, two rudders.
There's two of them, yeah. So it's like an A10 Warthog, only like this. So
Yeah, because the A10s go up like this, right?
up,
They still move from side to side, but they're not. It's not just the one rudder piece.
Yeah, just the back piece, not the whole thing. Just there's like the rudder, which is a quarter of the back of it moves this way.
All right, gotcha.
So Beechcraft Bonanza, he's flying with his father in 1970, and having a good time, maybe getting some sandwiches or something cool. And this is his theory because he went through it himself.
Right.
He said an elliptical-shaped cloud started forming ahead of both of them, about 3 miles off of Andros Island. And before he could get out of the cloud, it engulfed the plane, and it created a tunnel around them. So he had this electromagnetic tunnel of clouds. So
and zero visibility at that point, I would guess, when you're surrounded like that.
Zero visibility, but he could see that he was in a tunnel. It was a tunnel shape of sparking, lightning-y, dark, swirling tunnel that he was.
Very strange.
Very strange. And they were
probably not exactly thrilled at that moment. I'd be shitting my pants.
No, he's shitting his pants, and his dials are going wacko. And he started having a feeling of zero gravity, and again, all of his navigational systems started to collapse. So it suddenly the cloud disintegrated right over Miami Beach, and he was again spotted on radar. But by then, they traveled 100 miles in 30 minutes, which is significantly less than the time that takes. 30 minutes should not get you 100 miles in an airplane like that. You're going 100 and probably 120, 130 miles an hour. So what's even crazier about another story is that it's the exact same story by a pilot with the last name Jensen, that he was only at 150 feet above the ground and went through the exact same thing. This was the cloud formed at like a crazy 150 feet is, 15 gorillas tall, and That's treetop level. And
yeah. 15 gorillas high.
yeah. And after 11 hours, 600 miles away from where he was lost earlier, and he was heard from again, and then he vanished again without a trace.
Really?
Yeah. So 11 hours, 600 miles away, he was heard from and then vanished and never heard from again. After experiencing the same thing.
Yeah. I mean,
so those
especially the speed of travel and that whole thing of it is much less explainable than the other instances of, maybe a ship. For example, that the Avengers or the PBM-5s seeing the explosion and things like that. I mean, obviously we don't have any evidence afterwards, but you can kind of have an explanation for this. Maybe particularly could have gone this way. Maybe there was an explosion, but that rate of distance changing and that kind of situation is a lot harder to explain what actually went down there. That's not a usual thing you can explain away with bad weather.
Yeah, no. Yeah, exactly. Bad weather for all of them. Yeah, it's just crazy. So first theory is this electromagnetic cloud time warp wormhole thing. Could be one thing. That's my first thing. And then second, I guess, would be a wormhole entirely, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. Like I said, this section of the world is so disturbing and weird. But as far as I understand it, wormholes are, I mean, they can be multiple different sizes because of the nature of them. We think that most wormholes that exist in the universe are so infinitesimally small you wouldn't even be able to see them with your naked eye, and even with microscopes it'd be difficult to see them because they're just these tiny rips in the space-time continuum that we believe connect to other sections of the universe. And even though we can see them as a giant gap that might be 50 light years or 1,000 light years from end to end, if you could travel through one of these wormholes, theoretically you'd be on the other side instantly. So you're basically cutting through a giant swath of space in an instant. And if something like that existed on Earth, you'd be able to travel that fast. But because of the fact that wormholes are so rare, and if they were the size of an airplane, it would take an immense amount of energy to make them that size. The amount of energy you need to make a wormhole the size of a car, you'd almost need the power grid of the entire United States to power that much force to keep a wormhole like that open. So as of right now, we don't have the technology to do that. If it's some kind of anomaly that's going on in space-time and it's happening itself through and some kind of other source we don't know about yet, maybe it's that. As of right now, we could never produce a wormhole that is large enough even to drive a Camry through, because it would just take too much energy to do it. So I don't think that those are existing on Earth to that level, because there'd be such a large disturbance that it'd be unlikely for us to not pick that up. But I'm not ruling it out, but I just think it's pretty unlikely.
So wormholes were really discovered by Albert Einstein. He was the one who theorized that. He
theorized them first.
He theorized them as the Einstein-Rosen bridge, and said that these are maybe possible based off math.
Like any great scientist, which Einstein certainly was, he guessed something was possible before it was later proven to be possible. And Einstein did that on multiple occasions. And like you said, wormholes is one of them. We've now proven that they are possible. But when he came up with the idea of them in theory, we had not yet proven they were possible. He just theorized the way the math works out, the way I understand space-time, which he is basically the father of understanding that space-time is one single fabric of the universe. It's not two separate things.
Crazy.
He theorized the wormholes could possibly exist in the universe, and we now know that they most certainly can.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was described on the History Channel as like, here's a sheet of paper, and you have point A and point B, and a wormhole is literally space and time is here, and all it does is to connect them like this, so it's just here to here. Like doesn't make sense.
That is the perfect, that's the perfect example of what it's like. It's a visual example, because the way we visualize it with a piece of paper, we have a two-dimensional object that's just length and width, and if you could bend it in a way that it becomes three-dimensional, then you could travel from this point to that point at the same time almost instantly. But wormholes are taking a three-dimensional object, which is the universe we live in, and introducing a fourth dimension. So you can't visualize it physically because we're human beings. We can't understand that. But if you could possibly bend the world in a way that the third dimension would bend to a fourth dimension or a separate dimension like that, if this paper was 3D and you could still do that, that's what wormholes do in our universe. So it's very hard for us to comprehend, but that's the simplest way to describe them, is to take 1 degree less of difficulty and just make it as flat as a piece of paper, because trying to describe it as it actually is, which is bending 3-dimensional space and being able to, just pop along the edge like that. That's what a wormhole is. That's why they're so fascinating.
It's crazy. And who's to say that these storms or electromagnetic storms, whatever they're calling them, we don't pick them up because it just looks like a giant typhoon or something, or a hurricane. It could be a wormhole for all we know. We don't know.
Could be.
We probably know for the most part, but micro circumstances like this, where there's like little incidences, like a Piper cub going missing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe.
It's hard to say. It definitely makes it more possible for things like that to happen, to travel to that degree. And even though we don't know that a wormhole has ever taken place on planet Earth, or that meteorological circumstances like lightning storms or electromagnetic storms or even magnetic interference, the kind of thing that could disrupt your compass that completely depends on magnetism to work, could produce that. We don't know that could happen just because we've never seen it on Earth. But like you said, it doesn't mean it's impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
We've never seen it.
So what do you think? What else do you think's going on for crazy shit?
The other supernatural explanations I've heard is that it kind of goes back to that Christopher Columbus first sighting of the lanterns going up and down in the water, is that, or seeing objects in the sky like these spheres or lights, is that some people think that it's a UFO explanation, or that it's actually not just unidentified flying objects, but alien spacecrafts that are either, transporting or abducting these people. And maybe it's hard to find crews like Flight 19, but if you look back and you start to see those schooners that are drifting by themselves, or even that yacht, it's just people are disappearing off of the ship, and perhaps they were taken up by a spacecraft, and that would explain why the ship is relatively untouched, but yet all the people have gone missing. They didn't swim away, unless they drowned, but they wouldn't do that on purpose. Why would you jump off a ship when you have a perfectly well-working ship there?
I have no comment.
You got to keep your lips
comment
sealed
on this topic.
So I've heard that explanation, but I think my favorite one, on the degree of interesting, or how interesting it is rather, is the one that you brought up briefly earlier with that road that is, or what we believe to be a road constructed on the water. The most interesting one to me is the idea that the location of the lost city of Atlantis is actually within the Bermuda Triangle, and the fact that all these people have gone missing is to try to hide the location of Atlantis. So if people get too close to it, or they start to disturb the Atlanteans, they actually use some kind of I don't know if it's supernatural, if it's magic, if it's just technology or what it is, but they try to disappear peoples that come too close, kind of like an Atlantean defense system.
I'm going to add some value to that. I don't think it's some sort of defense system. I just think that in the lost city of Atlantis, seen here, we have
there.
This is made
Is that
of
coral?
Ivory.
Oh, ivory. Oh, wow.
Yeah. We know Atlantis to be a super civilization that is technologically advanced, way past their time, which is potentially 10,000 years, like 10,000 BC. They had this. Some people think that an energy source that produced a lot of energy of some sort in this place, just like Plato said, got basically sunk under the sea. Bimini Road is there. There's some other things around that area that are kind of a little bit interesting, and that say it's a crystal or something weird that's manipulating energy might still be giving off some sort of radiation that is producing an electromagnetic field or something, or let's just not radiation, let's say radiating an electromagnetic field from whatever the situation is here that is causing malfunctions in modern day equipment.
I mean, yeah, that really could be an explanation to it. We got to do a podcast on Atlantis, I think, because it'd be a really interesting topic. I'm unconvinced of Atlantis. I think it's more of an idea, and people like to take a lot of old text and say that it points to this mythical city. There's other versions of this, like El Dorado, the lost city of gold, or ancient cities that are written about, but we don't actually have any physical evidence for. And when you start adding in things like power crystals and energy and things like that, you obviously lose me, because you're getting far away from what we understand science to be, and start to get into like the magical thinking kind of side of things. And that's fun to dabble into. But the idea of power crystals, first of all, is surely a magical thing. We don't have any crystals in real life that actually emit energy in the way that they do in things like Reiki.
They don't emit. They don't. None of them emit energy. Or give off energy. I mean, even when I worked with telecommunications with Dunkin' Donuts headsets, all the base stations had crystals in them because they are highly conductive.
Conducting energy. I see what you're saying.
These are conductive type of things. So they think that back in the day, Earth had a different type of energy field that was more linear. And there would be super conductive spots like the pyramids, like Atlantis, like whatever it is, that could harness the energy of the Earth naturally. Be able to use that as like an energy source to power something.
Well, I mean, yeah, there is,
so it's not that this is something
minerals that conduct electricity well,
and harnessing it.
Yeah, I mean, picturing anyone who has, a cell phone or computer or whatever, silicon is a crystal in the same way that sand particles are crystals, but they're not exactly the ones that from the Dark Crystal, the Muppets movie, where you see the big purple crystal that has all the dark energy and powers in it. But yeah, I can see that if you break it down to that degree, it is conductive.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking on that, not magic.
But to wind it back to both ways, an example of a mythical city that was written about in a story and people believed was maybe existed, but many modern scholars believed it was mostly just a made-up tale and that might have never existed at all, is the city of Troy, written about in the Iliad. And for years and years, there was no evidence that Troy ever existed besides the story of the Iliad and maybe other oral history tales to tell of the city of Troy, and that actually all went down, if it actually really happened. It wasn't until many years later that they actually discovered the location of the lost city of Troy and the castle of Agamemnon and all the ruins of that there. So even though for hundreds of years it was perceived as maybe people believe it existed, but more likely it's a story like I believe Atlantis is, where it's more of a tale that maybe people are misunderstanding what it is, or word of mouth, things like that, but you can't actually prove it exists. But the city of Troy is a real world example of a mythical city that we believed might have existed, but we had no proof for. And then lo and behold, we have now found the exact location of Troy. And there's not a whole lot left there. It's not like going to visit Rome, but the evidence is still there that that's what Troy existed. And most experts believe that they know the location of Troy now. So it's not just in the story of the Iliad. It's a real city, really existed.
Yeah. And Atlantis could be the next one that we talk about.
Maybe.
When we talk about Atlantis, we'll go there, but I've been to the most thought place that it might have been, and it's in Greece.
Interesting.
Yeah, I woke up every morning looking at the volcano area that they thought it was in. Pretty cool. And Santorini. Yeah. Pretty sweet stuff. So as Joe mentioned, Atlantis, aliens, different time warps through wormholes stuff. That's kind of it for crazy shit. So now we have some kind of downer.
How can we explain this for explanations that happen every day to ships and planes, and things that maybe don't happen very often, but it could possibly happen to them, to actually explain these insane disappearances and these shipwrecks and these plane wrecks?
And some of these explanations really are solid. I mean, they really could explain the magnetic field anomalies with the compasses and that type of stuff. And multiple other things, but we've got variabilities in the magnetic field. Very possible. It does happen.
If there was any anomalies, then the compasses wouldn't work that way. They're completely dependent on the fact that the magnetic poles in the earth are in a certain place and they don't change. And like you said, there's already they vary so much that pilots and ship navigators have to account for that when they're setting up their navigation. They say there's something called true north, which is what we would say geographically is the most northern part of the planet. So if you go anywhere beyond that, you're going south in any direction. And then there's magnetic north, which is where the magnetic field of the Earth's North Pole is actually located. And that changes on a yearly basis. And sometimes it can be off as much as, like I said, 35 miles. And that seems like a lot to us now, but it's not really a lot during, if you look at the entire scope of the Earth is massive. 35 miles isn't that much, but 35 miles is a ton when you're navigating. I mean, have you ever done the thing where where you're walking on the sidewalk and you close your eyes and try to see how far you can walk without like stepping off the sidewalk?
I have.
Hopefully there's no cars. I've done it too. And you start to realize when you're blind, if you walk even slightly to the side a little bit and you're not exactly straight, within 5 feet, you're off the sidewalk. All it is a slight difference. In your mind, you're walking completely straight, but you're actually walking slightly to the side. And I think that if you have your compasses set to magnetic north instead of true north or anything that goes sour with that, you can easily divert yourself off the path. And piloting ships, and especially planes, is an exact science to find out where you are. And if those degrees are even slightly off, you'll find yourself in a completely different place. And every single mile you fly that's slightly off, it's exponentially putting you farther and farther away from what you wanted to do. So if your magnetic north is off or your compass isn't working, it doesn't take much to get you well off track very fast. And the 35 miles difference becomes hundreds and then even 1,000 miles if you can fly that far, if you're that far off. So you need that to be perfect. And if it's not, you can get lost pretty easy.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So that's one thing. Another thing to make compasses spin is that it's a known fact in the area. There's a high concentration in that 500,000 square mile radius, square mile triangle.
Right.
There's a high concentration of magnetite, which is a magnetic rock under the
I don't know what that is. All right.
Yeah. It's just magnetite might be an element. I'm not sure. I don't quote me on that.
It's not an element.
Not an element. Okay.
No.
It's a type of rock that is
Gotcha.
magnetic. We've got methane bubbles, mechanical failures. I got two more, but what do you got, Joe, before I get into
Now, I think that methane bubbles is worth looking into because I've heard of possibly the Gulf Stream being a very powerful current around southern Florida into there. And if you're an inexperienced ship captain, or if your ship is not up for the task, it's almost like you said, trying to paddle a kayak in the bay in what was it, Portsmouth? Yeah, I mean, you can get in a lot of trouble, and try to expand that out to, instead of having a kayak, having a ship that's too small, and you can easily find yourself adrift and find yourself in big trouble there and get lost at sea. And people, when they're lost at sea, get pretty desperate, and any number of things could happen at that point. But I think that the methane hydrates is an interesting one to me because that's a phenomenon that is possible, and we've seen it experienced in the ocean, but we've never seen it actually take a ship down in real life. No one's witnessed a methane bubble taking down a ship, but basically there's natural gas within the different continental plates all over the earth, and a lot of them are trapped under the seafloor. And when the gas escapes, it escapes in a large bubble and it rises up to the top. If the concentration of gas is big enough, it can be the size of a ship and maybe even larger. So they started doing experiments in Australia to see if it was possible for a ship to be capsized or sink if they had a bubble that large go up beneath them, because in the ocean, naturally, or for the most part, you don't have bubbles that large. Even a whale burping would be just a splash in the water compared to that. But if these methane bubbles are as big as they say they are, they've done experiments to scale. So they haven't done it with full-size ships, but they've done it in a lab, and they've proven that a methane bubble or a bubble that large could capsize even a large ship if the bubble's big enough. So that could be one of the explanations where an otherwise great sailor, an experienced sailor, could have this bubble come up, change the pressure under the ship, fucks up your buoyancy, and once you're turned under, if you go down to below the ocean floor, they're not going to find you anyways, especially if you ended up in the Milwaukee Depth or one of the deepest trenches in the Atlantic Ocean. All it takes is a bubble like that. It doesn't matter how good you are at sailing, you get dragged to the deep. And I think that's might be one of the explanations of what happens to these ships. They just got really unlucky, wrong place, wrong time. Picture driving on the highway at 75 miles an hour and a boulder comes and directly crushes your car. It's very unlikely, but if it happens, you're fucking screwed. It doesn't matter how good of a driver you are.
Yeah, and on the note of buoyancy, there's another explanation that has been also proven to take down ships too, which is kind of unknown and more of a recent one, is algae.
Algae.
Yeah, so a lot of it is 100%. You can go Google videos of this type of stuff for hundreds of miles. There'll be this like ridiculous algae that again, it's not gonna. It basically, so if you imagine an icebreaker, this is the best way to describe it.
Mhm.
In the North or South Pole, and that boat, it basically goes up, hits the ice, and then goes on top of it, and then it
And
breaks. But if
crushes
it
it.
doesn't break before that, the boat goes all the way on top of ice, and it can tip over.
Right, because now it's at an angle. You need to keep crushing it. If you start sliding up, the
Yeah.
more and more it's angled upwards, the less and less energy you need to turn it from side to side, right?
Exactly.
Picture like how much it takes if you're sitting in your chair right now. How much force does it take for you to tip to one side if it's completely flat? But if you tip yourself back, it takes a lot less force to move it from side to side because now you're at an angle. So that takes only a little bit of force. And you flip yourself right over.
Yeah, exactly. And real world example, the only time I've ever capsized in a kayak.
Oh, okay.
Because I decided there's
First hand example, not just real world.
Yeah,
First hand.
capsized before. And I was in the river in the spring, so a lot of down trees because it's not cleaned up yet. And
Sure.
it's really fun because if you got a small enough kayak like I do, you paddle really hard and get up on the log or the down tree.
Oh,
you
yeah.
push yourself over it, and then you kind of
just
come down.
hop right over.
Yes,
Yeah.
you don't have to get out of the kayak. You can get yourself over it, no problem. But
Mhm.
if you're drunk, it's harder.
It's true, which is true for most things.
It's true. And
Not podcasting though. Let me tell you.
And I got up on it with my friends. They're all, whatever it was. And I just, it did exactly that. It just put me on one side and I just went right in.
Right.
Full
Oh,
blown,
damn.
right in there.
Not good.
Because I just wasn't able to stabilize myself as much because it's easy to stay stable in the water because you have
Right.
so
You're
much
flush
water
with
around
the
you.
water.
But we have you're on just a pole like this. You can move like this so much easier.
Mhm.
Same thing with algae. So the algae surrounds you. It changes the buoyancy drastically and can
Wow.
cause you to tip over and then you sink like a rock.
That's interesting. Yeah, I did not hear about that one. But that makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one, and there's a whole documentary about that algae. It's not like this is a speculation. It's real. It's there,
Yeah.
and it's taken on smaller boats for sure. So they're thinking for larger boats, why not?
Sure. Yeah, that's some wild shit.
Yeah. What else you got?
But yeah, I mean that's basically besides the individual cases that we could take step by step. I mean, it's hard to maintain. You have to really dive into each one and see what are the information we know. Unfortunately, we don't know a lot about it. And in particular, the USS Cyclops, it is theorized that not just because of the engine failure to begin with, but they actually took on much more weight than they were rated for. So it's things like that. That's kind of what Doug talked about, where anything can happen. But if you don't, do your pre-flight checklist for that ship, it would be don't overload the ship, and then if one engine fails, you're fucked over. And that might have been the same thing that happened to the sister boats too, where they're just loading these things up with way too much, and it got too dangerous, and the whole thing went down. And when you're overloading a cargo ship, it's not the same as a kayak, but it can tip over just as easily, and that thing goes down fast. And all those people, unfortunately, don't have much time. I mean, it is scary to see. You can watch controlled sinkings of Navy ships, and there's no one inside when they do it, but it gives you an example of what it looks like when there are people inside. And for a ship that large and that buoyant, they can go down in a matter of minutes. And it wouldn't surprise me if in 1918 a cargo ship like that went straight down before anyone got off, and anyone who might have got off in time, they weren't able to swim to any of the islands in the Bermuda Triangle fast enough, and they just sunk to the bottom, and they were never found again.
Yeah. Yep. Could totally be. I didn't do any research into water currents because, like, again, if you go missing off of like most places, you probably will end up on a beach somewhere.
Yeah, a lot of times if you're close enough to the shore, you'll certainly end up right back on the beach, unless like you said, unless you're eaten by sharks or there's more weight to you, or you're trapped inside a metal object and you sink down with it.
Yeah. A lot of times you will show up. The ocean has a weird way of putting a bunch of shit back on.
Like what happened to the Witta when they found the wreck of the Witta. It was because of all the bodies and debris washing up on the shore. Yep,
exactly. I mean, there's been this has been researched by the government, the Navy, the Air Force, everybody else, and the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
And exactly what you just said, the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Coast Guard contend that there are no supernatural explanations for disasters at sea. Their experience suggests that the combined forces of nature and human fallibility outdo even the most incredulous science fiction.
Yeah. And I have to agree with them on that fact because, my usual self, I think there's usually always a scientific explanation for it. Even if we don't know it, it doesn't mean that there isn't a logical explanation for it. But this one has me stumped, man. Even though I think that for the most part, you can explain away a lot of these. And then a lot of times you can find the evidence for what happened. If you find those shipwrecks or those planes that are downed in the Keys and things like that. But this one is tough because there's just so little evidence for it and there's so little knowledge going into it that it's hard for me to say, bar none, this is what happened and that's it. I think it's more than likely that almost all of these can be explained by, things like that, like errors or severe weather conditions. But I will not say for sure that that's what happened because some of them are just so strange. I don't know what to say.
Yeah. And as most things, I mean, like, we don't have all the details. We don't have the facts. We don't have every piece of information. Sometimes they're not releasing all that stuff.
Sure.
This is one, where the nature and human fallibility is quite overwhelming with evidence. Even with Flight 19, I mean, one guy was a little bit whack and confused and had some anxiety or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and at least one of them, but maybe even more than one, clearly knew that they should have been heading west and just fell in line kind of deal. So.
Fell in line. That's exactly it. So, but overall, them reporting instrumentation failures or discrepancies is quite real, and I think that were they sucked into a wormhole, it's romantic to think that.
Sure,
it's alive somewhere today, or they might show up. Later.
They travel through time and they show up next week, and they're the same age in the same planes, and they just went through that wormhole and entered the few. That'd be crazy. It'd be really cool.
And no one really knows, but overall, probably not. But
probably not.
But overall, there's pretty good evidence that there's a problem. Just like with the PBM 5, we have 2 witnesses that there was a radio transmission and an explosion in the air and a avgas puddle in the middle of the ocean.
So that's
probably
pretty good
blew up.
Yeah. Still unfortunate.
That airplane particularly was known to have some sort of gas ventilation problem where it could spontaneously combust, which is crazy that they would let that fly with such a huge possibility.
Absolutely, yeah. And the plane would go up like that even in a training exercise. It's definitely dangerous. I hope they don't still fly those things if that's the case, but maybe that's the explanation for it.
I don't know.
But obviously very strange because going off the tails of a strange thing like that, that's what I love about that story. Not only did Flight 19 go down, the flight that was sent to save them went down too. We don't know why.
That's the thing. That's why it's like, hey, there might be something more to this. I don't know. Like, fitting our rules of multiple people in multiple places seeing the same.
A lot of witnesses and not a lot of evidence to figure out what actually happened. So, it's wild.
Exactly. So, who knows? I hope to update you guys all soon with some more modern information off this stuff, especially as technology. We're going to get some answers somewhat soon for this stuff. Especially
I hope that as we can search deeper and deeper in the ocean and get more of a picture of what's going on in that section of the ocean, and maybe even explore deeper in things like the Milwaukee Depth, that we might be able to find some of these shipwrecks and at least be able to explain 1 or 2 of these missing cases and at least understand it to some degree. Or maybe we finally find Atlantis down there where we can get deep enough.
We'll see.
I know.
We'll find out. So could be pretty cool. But what do you think, Joe? Wrap it up?
Yeah, I think so.
That's it. That's the Dylan Joe Basement Podcast. We'll see you guys next week for potential list of important topics that we want to share with you guys. We're trying to figure it out at the moment, but we got a fee for you. So
stay safe out there. Make sure you have more than one compass and stay in radio contact because we're going to want to find you if you go down.
Yep, exactly. And just be aware that if you do fly in the Bermuda Triangle as a private pilot, there are more than 10 reasons not to fly in there. We'll see you guys next week.
I don't have a Madame de Voyage. You better believe I'm diving in with those mermaids.
I'd be like, yeah, all right. They have beautiful voices, so they're like singing to you, and they're just on this rock calling your name. I'd be like,
it's a no-brainer. You gotta go.
Let me just park this thing.
Yeah, let me just, I'll be careful. I have to check it out though. I'd be stupid not to.
Park this thing real quick. Get the old boat out there. I'll be right over there.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
I wouldn't die.
It's fine.
You look like you're in the movie 2001. No, literally like the movie Moon or 2001 Space Odyssey, where you're just like in the spaceship, like because you were so white, like blue. You're blue. Yeah. But if you're drunk, it's harder.
It's true, which is true for most things.
It's true, and
Not podcasting though. Let me tell you. Why would you jump off a ship when you have a perfectly well-working ship there?
I have no comment.
And you're shitting a solid gold brick because you don't know where you are.
Stressful.
You know,